Chapter 1022. Although Wu Chen's voice was very soft, Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard heard it clearly. She immediately blushed and expressed that she was innocent. He couldn't blame her for sweating, right? But then the embarrassment in his heart was annihilated by the monstrous flame. After taking advantage of others, Wu Chen's face was full of disgust, as if he had been greatly insulted. Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard was instantly furious. Brat, when I have the chance, I will definitely kill you and humiliate you. Yi glared and warned fiercely. Dustless didn't even look at her. He was thinking of a countermeasure. He only yearned for the Hogyoku. If you know what's good for you, give it to me. Don't seek your own death. Dustless raised his voice and scolded. At the same time, he retracted his hand that was close to Yi's nose. She couldn't stand the stench of sweat. His hands continued to grope inside Yi's body, and made exaggerated movements to provoke Urahara Kasuk. I have to calm down. He is doing this on purpose. I can't be fooled. Urahara Kasuk took a deep breath and reminded himself. The flames in his eyes gradually extinguished. He was like a monk who had no desires and no desires. This brat's willpower is so strong. He can still endure teasing his girlfriend. Dustless couldn't help but be stunned. He felt that it was unbelievable. If it was him, he would have already blasted Urahara Kasuk to smithereens. Don't compare Kasuk with an ordinary person like you. When Four Maple Courtyard's knight saw Urahara Kasuk's calm demeanor, he arrogantly said to Wu Chen, "Your despicable plan is far from enough to sway Kasuk's mentality." Dustless couldn't deny her words. He echoed, "Indeed, it's far from enough. Since you think I'm too kind, then I'll go even further." Dustless's eyes shot out the light of desire. He suddenly formed a seal with one hand and shouted, "Shadow clone technique." Bang bang bang. A few figures that looked exactly like Dustless suddenly appeared. They were holding all kinds of tools in their hands. Video camera? Urahara Kasuk frowned as he looked at the shadow doppelgangers that suddenly appeared. Having lived in the modern world for decades, he was very clear about this kind of thing. Although she's a bit smelly, her skin is a bit darker, and her temper is a bit worse, she'll still be the same after a bit of adjustment, teaching and turning off the lights. Dustless's wolf-like eyes circled around Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard. From time to time, he would let out a horrifying laugh. Urahara Kasuk's heart skipped a beat. He realized that something was wrong and asked with a livid face, "What do you want to do? It's useless to threaten me. It's best not to waste your energy." "Is that so?" Hearing this, Dustless looked at Urahara Kasuk playfully, and immediately said to himself, "I heard that money is indispensable in this world. Unfortunately, I come from Soul Society, so I naturally don't have that kind of paper money. I don't want to go back to Soul Society recently, so it's inevitable to make some extra money." After saying that, Wu Chen looked at Urahara Kasuk, and then pretended to be wretched and said, "Although I'm the captain, I'm a law-abiding person. It's impossible for me to rob her, so I can only count on Miss Yori to cooperate with me to make some money. Don't you understand, Manager Urahara?" Hearing this, Urahara Kasuk frowned tightly. He really didn't understand Dustless's meaning. This despicable person is even more shameless than Aizen Sosuke. What is he planning? Urahara Kasuk's mood changed. He suddenly felt that the previous Aizen was too cute. At the very least, Aizen wouldn't do such a despicable and shameless thing. This scene seems to have been played in some TV series. A few people with cameras, a man with a wretched smile, and a weak girl who can make some extra money. Urahara Kasuk had a feeling of déjà vu. He scratched his head and looked at Yi, who was wearing revealing clothes, and a horrible thought flashed in his mind. "If you dare to do that, I will tear you into pieces." After thinking about what Dustless said, Urahara Kasuk's eyes were burning, and his whole body was trembling with anger. "Aw, you finally understand what I'm talking about. That's right, we're going to shoot an AV. I'm the male lead, so Yi can only be the female lead." Dustless admitted without hesitation, and then ordered the shadow clones, "When we shoot, remember to make sure I'm pixelated. But this stubborn girl can't be pixelated. Not only that, but we also need to change her camera to 800 pixels. Every part of her must be shot clearly to benefit the whole human race. Understood. The shadow clones nodded and promised. Bastard, I'll kill you. These words angered Urahara Kasuke. His body, which was standing in the sky, almost couldn't support himself and fell to the ground. You. This. Bastard. Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard flew into a rage and roared word by word. He was so angry that his face turned red, and there was clear fear in his eyes. If Wuchen really did that, it would be worse than killing her 10,000 times. You think this is over? People like me like to treat all kinds of stubborn people. Dustless sneered, and then said bluntly, after shooting, I will sell it to Soul Society. The passion of one of the four noble families in Soul Society. There must be a lot of people who are tempted. Urahara Kasuke and Yi of Saifangs both vomited blood. Holding the Hogyoku in his hand tightly, Urahara Kasuke didn't dare to gamble. Even if Dustless was lying, he didn't dare to gamble. Otherwise, Yi of Saifangs would definitely lose his reputation, be despised by everyone, and Saifangs would become the laughingstock of the entire Soul Society. And Dustless with pixelated face would definitely be fine. Chapter 1023. Dustless smiled proudly looking at the constipated Urahara Kasuke. He was in a particularly good mood. The most despicable way is often the most effective. For people like Urahara Kasuke, the simple oppression of force can't force him to surrender. Only the most vulgar means will work. Why are you still going to insist, Miss Yori? Dustless smiled frivolously, and even because his acting was too realistic, saliva overflowed from the corner of his mouth. It was very wretched, and Yori of the Four Maple Court felt cold all over. Glancing at Urahara Kasuke, Yori of the Four Maple Court fell silent. Still hesitating, Wuchen sneered and shouted at the top of his voice, since that's the case, goodbye, Manager Urahara. After that, the void around Dustless began to distort and change. Kamui. A vortex began to slowly devour the bodies of Dustless and Yori of the Four Maple Court, and the latter half of their bodies gradually disappeared. Urahara Kasuke tensed up, and when Yori of the Four Maple Court disappeared, his nerves also tensed up. Until Yori of the Four Maple Court completely disappeared, he finally couldn't hold back. Take it. The shiny glowing ball was thrown out, and Dustless caught it very easily. At the same time, taking advantage of Dustless's distraction, Yori of the Four Maple Court broke free from the shackles. Is this Hogyoku? Dustless looked at the ball in his hand absent-mindedly, feeling the cool body temperature, and felt a little dry. Hogyoku is an extremely heaven-defying existence. As long as the host feels the threat of death and the will in his heart has been firm and unwilling to give up, it will continue to evolve. And there seems to be no limit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A strange wind and wave attracted Dustless's attention, and the sky was dark, and he was shocked to find that thousands of blades were aimed at him. Yes, I can use Hado number 91, so I can definitely use Hado number 90. Looking up at the falling cold light, Dustless muttered to himself. Urahara Kasuke snorted coldly, showing his murderous intent, and said hoarsely, Hogyoku is not so easy to take. If you want to take it, at least leave something for me. Immediately afterward, there was a loud roar, and the sky twisted. Dowbreaker's 90 black coffins. The sharp intersecting blades shone with cold light, and the center point was Dustless. Because of the Hogyoku, Dustless was distracted for a moment, so he was hit directly. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Dustless's complete body immediately had many cracks, but the effect was negligible. After a flash of light, Dustless recovered perfectly. That's fast, Dustless said in surprise. He had a new understanding of Urahara's run-up ability. Not only him, but also Yi of the Four Maple Court and the Megami Corps that had been heavily injured before had all disappeared. His running speed made Dustless feel ashamed of his inferiority. Next, East Deity wants that half of the Hogyoku. If they are fused together, the perfect Hogyoku will be born. With his heart burning, Dustless also left Kongzicho. At the moment, in Urahara Kasuke's house, or the basement of his house, two figures were busy panting, throwing all the Megami Corps into the hot spring carefully made by Urahara Kasuke to heal. And then they slept on the ground without caring about their image. This place was extremely special and hidden, and it could block the perception of Ryatsu. That kid must be talking nonsense. The head captain can't order him to seize the Hogyoku, and in such a rough and wretched way. Yi of the Four Maple Court blushed, thinking of Dustless's behavior and shameless remarks, and she was so angry that she saw stars. It's a pity to give the Hogyoku to that kid, Yi of the Four Maple Court said very dejectedly. Hearing that, Urahara Kasuke waved his hand. Not only was he not disappointed, but he also had a smile of success. Miss Yi doesn't need to care, that's not important. In any case, this matter is not bad for us. That guy took the Hogyoku, but it will cause a lot of trouble. Urahara Kasuke's eyes were full of wisdom, and he explained in a deep voice. If he can really give the Hogyoku to the head captain, it will be the best. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years is the strongest prison. No one can steal from the head captain. What if that kid keeps the Hogyoku for himself? After all, that kind of thing can break the boundary between Hollow and Shinigami, and everyone will be greedy. Yi of the Four Maple Court sighed and asked, thinking that Urahara Kasuke was comforting her. Even if he really wants the Hogyoku, it doesn't matter. We can tell this news to Sosuke Aizen, and let them kill each other. In addition, I have set a seal inside the Hogyoku, and it can be triggered at the right time. Urahara Kasuke explained confidently, and he was unusually calm. That's right, we can make him and Sosuke Aizen kill each other. Yi of the Four Maple Court's eyes were shining. She was very clear about Aizen's desire for the Hogyoku. Just now, Dustless made her feel extremely aggrieved, but she couldn't do anything about it. She was captured as a captive and was casually molested. Thinking about it, Yi of the Four Maple Court's cheeks became hot. Kakaka, the sky of Hueco Mundo distorted, and Dustless swept out, looking down at Hueco Mundo below, and flew straight over. Next is the half Hogyoku in East Sensei's hand. Landing on the ground, Dustless rushed in the direction of East Sensei. Originally, he hoped that Aizen would be able to take the Hogyoku, but it would take many years. Dustless didn't have time, so he could only do it himself. Combining Urahara Kasuke's Hogyoku with Aizen's Hogyoku, the real Hogyoku will be born. Chapter 1024. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo, and Four Maple Court's Night Cat also stepped into Soul Society. According to Urahara Kasuke's plan, he told Aizen Sosuke everything. Of course, Four Maple Court wasn't an idiot. If he told Aizen directly, it would arouse his suspicions. Instead, he used multiple channels to let Jin know, and then passed it to Aizen through Jin's mouth. Bang, bang, bang. In the dark laboratory, there was the sound of porcelain breaking, and there were more pieces of porcelain on the ground. So that's how it is. I thought Urahara was the only one who had the same idea as me. Who would have thought that there would be a stronger opponent on this thorny road? Aizen muttered to himself with an expressionless Sosuke as his spiritual pressure surged, and he easily crushed the cup. Captain Aizen is angry? That's rare. Ikemaru Jin looked at the gloomy Aizen in surprise. He rarely got angry, and he never showed his emotions. No one knew what Aizen was thinking. No, Captain Aizen is just happy. Ikemaru Jin caught the subtle smile on Aizen's face and shook his head to deny his previous thoughts. Being able to find an opponent is something to be excited about. Those days of being lonely at the top and looking down on all the other mountains are actually quite painful. Silver. Sosuke Aizen was very interested in this fight. He was always disappointed that he couldn't find an opponent. He thought that Urahara Kasuke would be able to compete with him. But who would have thought that Urahara Kasuke would be able to play with him? Urahara Kasuke left Aizen's sight forever. He ran to the outside world and hid like a mouse. God is really good to me, sending me another opponent, Aizen said in a low voice. He clenched his fists and looked at the sky, thanking the heavens. Captain Aizen, seeing this, Ikemaru Jin couldn't help but stand up and remind them. We've fought with Captain Wuchen many times, but it seems like we've been tricked by him every time. So far, we haven't taken advantage of him even once. So what, a momentary loss and victory doesn't mean anything. Sosuke Aizen's mouth twitched as he said calmly. Seeing how happy Aizen was, Jin had to remind him. East Sensei is still in Hueco Mundo. That guy is also in Hueco Mundo, If he catches us and finds Hogyoku. Speaking of this, Jin looked at Aizen Sosuke, waiting for him to make a decision. What's there to worry about? Isn't that great? Aizen wasn't angry. Instead, he looked forward to it. We've been researching hollows for almost 100 years, but we haven't made much progress. If Captain Dustless can create something that can break through hollows, then we'll have to thank him. Hearing this, the smile on Jin's face disappeared as he sensed the hidden meaning in Aizen's words. He said in surprise, Captain Aizen, are you going to ignore that guy? I don't think that's a good idea. If he takes away the Hungyu, our plan, which has been painstakingly planned for hundreds of years, will go down the drain. Jin, don't worry. Aizen's voice was soft and gentle, but his expression was frosty. Once he creates a perfect Hogyoku, we can take advantage of the situation. Even if he fails, I can still use Kyoka Suigetsu to control the Central Room 46 and order Soul Society to capture him. No matter what, victory is in our hands. We can just sit back and watch. Ikamaru Jin nodded in agreement. What about Captain Ise Sensei? Ikamaru Jin suddenly asked. The gap between Ise Sengoku and Dustless was too big. If they were to encounter each other, they would definitely be mercilessly suppressed and killed. You mean you want it? Sosuke Aizen narrowed his eyes, radiating a cold light as he said indifferently. It's up to the heavens to plan. Everyone's fate is the same. If Ise Sensei survives, it means he's blessed by God. If he's unfortunately killed, he can only blame himself for not being strong enough. His words determined Ise Sensei's fate. Sosuke Aizen wasn't only cruel to his subordinates, he was also cruel to his own people. Once someone was no longer useful, he would kill them without hesitation. Of course, Aizen's success had a lot to do with his ruthless personality. However, if we ignore Dongxian, the Hogyoku will definitely be taken away by Captain Wuchen in the end. If he fuses with the Hogyoku, the situation will be very bad for us. Dustless's strength was unfathomable. If he got the Hogyoku, he would be like a tiger with wings. There was no need to fight him, they could just prepare a suitable coffin. Don't worry, Jin. Aizen's voice was full of magic, and his eyes were full of wisdom. Ikamaru Jin's restless heart calmed down for a moment. If we can't do it, we can use Kyoka Suigetsu to command the entire Shinigami. Aizen touched his glasses and continued. Even if we can't do it, we still have those guys. Jin's eyes lit up. Captain Aizen, are you talking about Team Zero? Aizen smiled and said calmly, yes, it's them. If Squad Zero can be controlled well, they will be our best fighter. They can help me teach that arrogant brat a lesson. He has ruined my plans time and time again. Sometimes enemies could be used. The key was the method. Chapter 1025. Aizen's eyes shone brightly, his entire body brimming with vitality. His confident appearance made others involuntarily submit to him, and the entire world instantly became his stage. From beginning to end, Jin was the only one in the audience. Keep an eye on Dustless. Once he takes Ise Sensei's Hogyoku, our plan will begin. Aizen walked out of the dark laboratory with Ikamaru following behind him. When there were a lot of people, Aizen and Jin went into acting mode. Jin had a cunning smile, while Aizen had an expression that said he would rather die than be involved in the same situation as Sosuke. In front of outsiders, Aizen and Jin continued to be hostile. 3 days later, in Hueco Mundo, in an unknown cave. Did Ise Sensei find where he hid the Hogyoku? Dustless asked impatiently after Hellable appeared. Hellable nodded. Master, don't worry. I got the news that Ise Sensei hid the Hogyoku in a room in Lost Yi Temple. After Beiligan died, Ise Sensei, who was kicked out of Soul Society by Dustless, became the uncrowned king. He even built the majestic Lost Yi Temple. Of course, he was still Aizen's subordinate. Hearing this, Wuchen was not happy. Instead, he was puzzled and said, Hogyoku is a top-secret material. How could the East deity let you get the information so easily? Hellable had only pledged allegiance to Dustless for 3 days, which meant that she could find out the location of the Hogyoku in 3 days at most. Such a short period of time was unscientific. Master, you mean? Hellable frowned. She thought it was strange. Occasionally, It would take a few hours to find someone in the huge Las Noches palace. Hellebel didn't even need 3 days because she had spent 2 days just waiting for Dustless. In other words, Hellebel found out about the Hogyoku in 1 day. That Hogyoku is very likely to be fake. It's used to test the loyalty of you great Void Masters. Understanding flashed in his eyes. Wu-chan affirmed. Ise-sensei and Aizen weren't idiots. The Hogyoku wouldn't let Hollows touch it. Those two are despicable. Hellebel scolded. She almost stole it. If she was caught, Ise-sensei would kill her without mercy. Ise-sensei is meticulous. It's impossible to get him to hand over the Hogyoku, Hellebel said. Hearing this, Wu-chan smiled mysteriously. With an unfathomable expression, he said methodically, "Don't worry about such trivial matters. If there is no way, we can create a way. Let East Deity take the initiative to lead us to get the Hogyoku." Who has a problem with Aizen or East Senpai? Do you want to be a traitor? Dustless suddenly asked. Hellebel lowered her head and pondered. Her mind filtered through all the great voids of Las Noches, and an arrogant face appeared in her mind. Grimmjow, he is the one who complains the most, and the one who can't get along with East Deity the most. With a sinister smile, Dustless said coldly, "In that case, I choose Grimmjow." 1 day later in Void Palace. Capture Hollows for experiments and give them to those bastards. Ise-sensei wants that guy. Emph. In the vast desert, a man with blue hair looked arrogant and dissatisfied. He scolded. "I have to do the work of those trash. If there's a chance, I must let Ise-sensei." "Do you know why you're doing the work of those trash? It means you're trash too. This job suits you, ha 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 ha." Countless photons floated in the sky and condensed into Dustless's face. Looking at it, the person who complained about Ise-sensei was Grimmjow. "Bastard, who are you calling trash?" Grimmjow was furious. He blew out a violent Ryatsu storm toward Dustless. "You're playing with fire. Do you know what happens when you provoke the death god? Your soul will be destroyed. You're as arrogant as Hellebel said." Dustless nodded slightly in his heart, ignoring the oncoming Ryatsu, then smiled and said, "What a coincidence, I'm a death god." Raising 5 fingers, Dustless shook them and said indifferently, "Trash like you, within 5 moves. Oh no, 5 moves is too much for you." Shaking his head decisively, Dustless closed 3 fingers, shook the remaining 2 fingers and said, "With only 2 moves, I can let you go to heaven." As soon as he finished speaking, the furious Grimmjow rushed over. So slow. Looking at the explosion sweeping toward him, this exaggerated lightning-like speed was as slow as a turtle crawling in Dustless's eyes. Hades 63 Thunder Roar Cannon. A ray of rainbow light flashed, and dangerous energy fluctuations lingered in the palm of his hand. After a little preparation, it stood out. Boom. Boom. Grimmjow, who was blinded by anger, was hit one by one. The powerful explosion seriously injured him. His whole body was blasted black and emitted the smell of barbecue. How can such a low-level Hades kill me? It's reasonable to say that it can't even break through my steel skin. Grimmjow was shocked. He moved his body a little, and the tingling pain spread all over his body. There were wounds all over his body, and blood overflowed from them. He stared blankly at Dustless. When did this kind of low-level Hades, which had no effect on the Great Void, become so powerful? Didn't I say before, you are trash so a low-level Hades can kill you? Dustless looked up at the sky, his nostrils facing Grimmjow, and his arrogant expression silently told him that looking at Grimmjow made him feel dirty. "You forced me to do this." Being so mercilessly mocked by Dustless, Grimmjow, who had a bad temper, was furious and used one of his strongest moves without mercy. A blue flash appeared in the palm of his hand, and its size continued to grow. Void Flash? Ignoring the existence of the energy ball, he looked down at Grimmjow as if he was looking at a bug. Chapter 10:26. Flashes of light cut through the sky above the sky, and it was very gorgeous. Wherever it passed, Ryatsu was burning, which was particularly spectacular and shocking. However, this was the fire of Grimmjow's anger. Shame, hatred, unwillingness, fear. All kinds of negative emotions filled Grimmjow's mind. He was so angry that blood oozed out of his gums, and his teeth were about to break from clenching them. Boom. Boom. The unhappy Grimjow struggled to hit the ground with Void Flash to vent his inner depression. Thousands of negative emotions gathered in his body and mind, and Grimjow's whole body was about to explode, and his Ryatsu went berserk. Whoosh. 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 A shocking divine rainbow swept over from afar, and Grimjow, who noticed it, immediately returned to normal, with a little confusion on his face. He was familiar with this unusually powerful Ryatsu. Her libel? After confirming that it was her libel, Grimjow sneered, and his sneer was full of disdain. Although her libel was a Vastotad, she belonged to the female Hueco Mundo, and was not welcomed in the entire Hueco Mundo, even if she was a Vastotad. By the way, I can work with her libel to deal with that guy. Thinking of Dustless, Grimjow's calm expression immediately became ferocious. He was beaten by Dustless and lost an arm, so he hated Dustless to the bone, and even had the impulse to perish together with Dustless. Wiping the sweat from his face, Grimjow remained calm. He valued his face more than his life, so he didn't want her libel to see him in such a sorry state. Her libel, a reaper is attacking. The unstoppable golden light approached Grimjow, and without showing signs of stopping, instead, it increased the eruption of Ryatsu, and slender legs kicked towards Grimjow's face. Bang! 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 Caught off guard, Grimjow was directly blasted down, smashing a large deep pit and eating a mouthful of sand. Give me an explanation. Otherwise, even if you are a confidant of Aizen and East Senpai, I will kill you. Grimjow roared hysterically, his sad tone full of endless killing intent. It was very difficult for him to speak, and he was choking. Widening his eyes, Grimjow was shocked to find that one of Hurlabel's feet was stepping on his face and blocking his mouth. What a great humiliation. Even if you are Aizen's confidant, I will kill you. Grimjow, whose expression changed greatly, said coldly. The remaining Ryatsu in his body surged, and he planned to go all out. His only remaining arm had already condensed Void Flash. You're really weak. Other than putting on airs, you're completely useless. Narrowing her eyes and looking at Grimjow's twisted face with disdain, Hellebel had a look of pity on her face. At the same time, a bright golden light swept out from the soles of her feet. Ka. The foot that stepped on Grimjow's face instantly became hundreds of times heavier, crushing the ground and breaking Grimjow's nose. Impossible. Vasto Lord, how did your spiritual pressure become so much stronger? It's much stronger than Ulquiora's. Feeling the spiritual pressure that was about to crush the world, Grimjow roared in disbelief. And where is the void mask on your face? In fact, due to excessive shock, both of their eyes were wide open. Short-sighted rats deserve to be abandoned. Hellebel sneered again and again. Her unique Zanpakuto was raised, and her eyes were cold. Obviously, she was going to kill Grimjow with one strike. If you kill me, Aizen and East Sensei will not let you go. Grimjow, who forced himself to calm down, threatened. Hellebel's eyes flashed with a sneer. Reorganizing her thoughts, Hellebel remembered Dustless's previous instructions and said, "The one who ordered me to kill you is actually East Sensei-sama." Looking at the bruised Grimjow, Hellebel said coldly, "A Juches is always a Juches. You are not qualified to follow Aizen-sama. People like you can only use it once, and then throw it into the garbage dump." Is the strengthening of your spiritual pressure also related to Aizen? Grimjow suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice. Yes. Hellebel said respectfully. All of this is thanks to Aizen-sama and East Sensei-sama. All of Vasto Lord underwent the second, Hogyoku transformation, and their abilities in all aspects have skyrocketed. They have also taken off the void mask, and their spiritual pressure has also skyrocketed. There was no doubt that these were all nonsense taught by Dustless to Hellebel. The reason why the mask could be taken off was actually because of the truth-seeking ball. The skyrocketing of spiritual pressure was even simpler. Using half of the Hogyoku taken from Urahara Kasuk to strengthen Hellebel's soul. Grimjow's face was pale, and he felt betrayed. Their group of Ajuchas had only experienced the Hogyoku transformation once. As expected of a leopard, a fierce predator is really easy to deceive. Hellebel secretly thought. and suddenly felt that Grimjow was extremely naive. He was obviously just an insignificant insect, but sometimes he disobeyed the orders of Aizen and East Sensei. If it weren't for the fact that this ant still had some value, he might have been obliterated by Aizen. Anyway, you Ajuchas are just abandoned pawns. It's normal to use the Hogyoku transformation once. You should feel honored. It's a waste to use the incredible power of the Hogyoku on you. It's a stain on the power of the gods. Hellable said coldly, degrading Ajuchas as worthless. Humph. You can become stronger again because of the so-called Hogyoku. Grimjow's expression was extremely ugly, and the corner of his eyes was replaced by cunning. He thought greedily in his heart. If I can get that Hogyoku, I will definitely be able to advance to Vasto Lord, or even surpass that level. Even Aizen and Shinigami won't be in my eyes. Although this faint change flashed by, Hellable still clearly caught it, and immediately sighed at the success of Dustless's plan. Chapter 1027. The purpose of Dustless beating Grimjow before was to make him aware of his vulnerability, and then Hellable came out to strike Grimjow's confidence, which was actually arranged in advance. All in all, it was to let Grimjow steal the Hogyoku, and Dustless finally reaped the benefits. Looking at Grimjow's broken arm, Hellable sighed at Dustless's unparalleled calculation, and deliberately said, Okuiora has been baptized by the Hogyoku and gained the ability of super regeneration. Thump! Grimjow's dead heart suddenly beat rapidly, and he felt a burst of excitement. If he gets the Hogyoku, his destroyed arm may be saved this time. No, I absolutely can't die in this place. Las Noches Palace is close at hand. I want to get the Hogyoku, dominate Hueco Mundo, and wipe out Soul Society. His eyes bloomed with strong vitality, and any creature in a critical situation will erupt with incredible power. Boom! Boom! Under the stimulation of the Hogyoku, Grimjow immediately burst out with unprecedented Ryatsu, and miraculously forced Hellable to retreat, and then used all his strength to rush to the sky. Whoosh! Boom! Boom! After a few void flashes, Hellable turned a deaf ear to it. Out of sight, out of mind, she simply let Grimjow leave. Tsk. That kid was so angry, he probably stole the Hogyoku. If East Sage knew that Grimjow betrayed her for no reason, she would probably vomit blood in anger. After a few breaths, there was a burst of gloating laughter, and then Dustless fell from the sky. For no reason? Hellable was speechless as she looked at Dustless, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Grimjow's current appearance was all calculated by Dustless. After experiencing a huge blow, the strength that he had always served betrayed him. No matter who it was, their temperament would change drastically like Grimjow's. Looking as far as the eye could see, Grimjow, who was 100 miles away, was right in front of him. Dustless frowned and said, I deliberately destroyed one of his arms to make Grimjow have hope in the Hogyoku, but now he is running so slowly, indicating that the blow to him was not enough. If his other arm was destroyed just now, he would be full of motivation. Dustless's self-mocking made Hellable break out in a cold sweat. What's the next step, young master? Her libel blinked and asked expectantly. This series of developments was just as Dustless had predicted. It's very simple. Grimjow can't steal the Hogjades openly. He will definitely sneak into Las Noches Palace secretly. My shadow clone has been observing Grimjow's movements. When he succeeds in stealing the Hogjades, I will send my shadow clone to inform you. At that time, you will rush over with East Sage. Hellable's eyes lit up. This strategy was not bad. It could improve her relationship with East Deity. In the future, East Deity might ask Hellable for any secret missions. But at that time it would be exposed. Suddenly sensing that something was wrong, Hellable said, East Deity's betrayal of Grimjow was made up by the young master. Once they meet, the truth will be revealed. Hearing this, Dustless had expected this and said confidently, It's very simple. Just let East Deity see Grimjow steal the Hogjades, and then I will kill Grimjow myself, not giving him a chance to speak. Hellable could gain trust, and Dustless could also steal the Hogjades, killing two birds with one stone. Damn East Deity, damn Aizen Sosuke, When I get that Hogjades, I will definitely teach you two a lesson. Taking advantage of the short gap between shifts, Grimjow slipped into the secret room where the Hogjades were stored. While cursing Eisen in his heart, he searched for the Hogjades with all his might. Found it. A unique flash in the darkness attracted Grimjow's attention. After a moment of joy, he quickly ran over and held the mysterious bead with both hands excitedly. This feeling, it's not right. He had been transformed by the Hogjades before, and Grimjow also had an impression of it. Although the bead in front of him had the same energy nature as the Hogjades, its power was 1,000 miles away. Grimjow, you disappoint me so much. There was a burst of explosion, and the closed door was turned into dust by the impact. East Deity appeared with a gloomy face, followed by Hellebel. When Grimjow invaded Las Noches, Dustless's shadow clone informed Hellebel. And after Hellebel received the news from Dustless, she immediately went to inform East Deity, asking Grimjow to be compassionate and seize the Hogjades. East Deity, who was skeptical, rushed over just in time to see this scene in front of him. Aizen-sama has been very kind to you, and you dare to betray us. East Deity spoke with anger, and his Zanpakuta was unsheathed, intending to clean up the mess. Everyone hates traitors. Hearing this, Grimjow sneered again and again. It was obvious that East Deity sent Hellebel to kill him, but now he slandered him as a traitor. Outrageous. Even if you are shameless, you can't be so shameless. Grimjow argued with reason, and said with a cold expression, You are really good at reversing right and wrong. You are the ones who mercilessly abandoned Dash. Grimjow, Aizen-sama has been very kind to you, and you dare to betray us. You have the ambition of a wolf. Without giving Grimjow a chance to speak, Hellebel said fiercely. Grimjow opened his mouth and was petrified, cursing Hellebel in his heart. She said that East Deity was going to send someone to kill him, but now she changed her words and denied it. When he was about to question Hellebel, in the darkness, a cold light swept across, and Grimjow lost the chance to speak forever. Pucci. Grimjow's head was separated from his body, and his neck was like a fountain of blood. It was a fatal blow. Chapter 1028. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They looked at each other in dismay before looking at the figure in the darkness at the same time. It's you. Ise-senpai, who was the first to react, glared at him. He clenched his fists and said coldly, There is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you insist on barging in. Don't forget whose territory Las Noches Palace is. Pa pa pa. The sound of footsteps came from the darkness, and a figure stepped out from it, revealing a smile like a spring breeze. So what if it's your territory? There is no place in this world that I can't go. Facing the murderous gazes, Wu-chan appeared to be at ease. He merely glanced at the Great Void Realm experts who were glaring at him covetously and ignored them. He's just a captain. How dare he be so arrogant when he barged into Las Noches Palace alone? Humph, he doesn't think that we are on the same level as that idiot Grimjow, does he? He can kill us if he wants to. We have more people, this captain will definitely die. The Great Voids discussed with each other and clamored to teach Dustless a lesson, but they didn't dare to do anything. Their eyes were fixed on Ise-senpai. His expression was full of hatred, and he didn't dare to do anything. Obviously, he was very wary of Dustless. Cough cough cough, clearing his throat slightly, Dustless said, Call out Hogyoku, this is the order of the head captain. Ise-senpai was indifferent and sneered, Head captain? That's your death god's head captain. It has nothing to do with me. Dustless's expression was indifferent. He was waiting for him to say this. After I catch you, I'll directly extract your memory. Clean, simple, and fast. Seeing that Ise-senpai was stubbornly resisting, Dustless immediately gave up the idea of attacking him verbally. There was no need to waste his breath on this kind of person who was loyal to Aizen. Remove all the restrictions I gave you before, and kill him with all your strength. Ise-senpai waved his hand and ordered with great momentum. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Hearing this group of Great Void Realm cultivators, who were scrambling to flatter Ji Hao, seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Their spiritual pressure leaked out in an unstoppable manner, converging into a vast sea of spiritual pressure and pressing down on Ji Hao. Ka ka ka. Dustless's body instantly cracked, visible to the naked eye. His entire body was in a mess, and the cracks devoured his entire body without any pattern. Can't even withstand a single blow. Upon seeing this, the Great Void Realm experts were incomparably disappointed. Their eyes became dim and lifeless. They originally thought that they would be able to display their strength in front of a powerful enemy, but who would have thought that it would be so weak, shattering with a single touch? A bunch of idiots, all of you attacked together. Back then, he was the one who chased me out of Soul Society. Seeing the Great Void Masters relax, East Deity raised her voice to warn them. He shook his head and whispered, "No wonder Lord Aizen wants to use these voids as pawns. Vasto Lord is no exception." East Sensei agreed with Aizen. Hollows were arrogant and looked down on everyone. It wasn't their fault, it was their nature. They couldn't change this bad habit, they were born with it. So dazzling. In the dark space where they couldn't even see their own fingers, an unusual flash of light suddenly appeared. It was so dazzling that all the Great Void Masters instinctively closed their eyes. The unique perception of the void spread out. They could only sense that Dustless's body was unharmed. What kind of joke is this? Wasn't he torn apart? Maybe it's some other strange ability. Isn't this kid wearing the captain's Haori? He should belong to one of the captains. He must have learned Bankai. Maybe it's his Bankai ability. How can the god of death have an ability like super regeneration? He's not a Great Void. The Great Void Masters were discussing in surprise. Taking advantage of this, Dustless condensed a large amount of light in his hand and shot it out. Yasakani no Magatama. Bang bang bang. There were many of them, and they were powerful. They were extremely fast. Many Great Void Masters didn't even have time to react before they were swallowed by the golden rainstorm. One by one, they knelt on the ground in agony. Their faces were filled with fear and extreme pain. Hundreds of holes appeared on their bodies. It was no different from being cut into pieces. Useless trash. What's the use of having you? Seeing this, East Deity Yao revealed his killing intent. He threw out a pink disc of flame in his hand. The target was the Great Void Masters who were howling in pain. Path of Destruction, Waste Flame. Boom boom boom. The pink flame exploded. In an instant, the dark room was lit up, and a big hole appeared on the roof. The cold East Deity, Yao, wanted to kill all the Great Void Masters in one fell swoop. Ah! You don't show any mercy to yourself, Captain East Deity. Oh no. Dustless, who realized his mistake, immediately corrected himself. He said apologetically, "It's more appropriate to call you the King of Hueco Mundo." However, East Deity Yao didn't appreciate it. He didn't have time to play with Dustless. Towards the person in front of him who he wanted to kill even in his dreams, East Deity Yao only had one feeling, and that was hatred. It was hatred that went deep into his body, deep into his organs, and deep into his soul. If you're willing to kowtow and admit your mistake, and agree to be my subordinate, I will reluctantly let you go. East Deity Yao, who was about to attack, remembered Aizen's words. Aizen also wanted to persuade Dustless to give up the darkness and join the light. It would be best if he could surrender. East Deity Yao didn't like Aizen's idea. He thought it was ridiculous. He might even be humiliated by Dustless. God was very kind to East Deity Yao. His idea came true immediately. Your hollow mundo looks like a cricket. It's ugly and disgusting, but if you're willing to be my mount, I will be merciful and let you go. Chapter 1029. You look like you can turn into a cricket. Although it's ugly and disgusting, if you are willing to be my mount, I will be merciful and let you go. Hearing this, East Sun Yao directly vomited blood, and his eyes were filled with stars. He regretted it so much. He knew that he should not talk nonsense with Dustless, this kind of person whose head was made of stone. Talking to this kind of unenlightened person was only asking for humiliation. The things that you have taken away, I will definitely take them back with double today. Rolling his eyes, East Deity Yao said while gritting his teeth and emitting a monstrous killing intent. What I took? That's a lot. Hearing this, Dustless lazily stretched, but he still couldn't help but ask curiously. Power, wealth, Hogyoku, fame. I took too many things. What are you talking about? East Sunyao snorted. That's none of my business. Today I will take your life. Boom, boom, boom. The moment his voice fell, a vast and unparalleled Ryatsu began to rampage. In an instant he moved to another planet. It was extremely difficult to walk in this world, and it became 10 times heavier. Frowning slightly, Dustless knew that this was an illusion brought by East Senyo's Ryatsu. It was just a deterrent. Ka. The floor under Dustless's feet exploded, and his whole body began to sink. You should have a hard time moving like this. East Sunyao laughed proudly, and his tone was carefree. Ever since they met Dustless, the tragedy of Aizen's group began. No matter if it was a coincidence or fate, their plans were all vaguely destroyed by Dustless. They suffered losses and were slapped in the face every time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A flash of light appeared and attracted East Deity's attention. He raised his head to look, but his pupils were filled with the flash of light. He didn't know when the elusive Wu Chen had appeared in front of him. Of course, there was also a heavy punch. Bang bang bang. East Sunyao, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. A big hole appeared in the dark glossy palace, and it became much brighter. He didn't react to my Ryatsu? What kind of monster is this guy? Dong Xianyao's face was covered in blood, and his nose had been flattened by Dustless. Staring at the cold and thin back, he said in a surprised tone, after being strengthened by the Hogyoku. Even if it's just a completed Hogyoku, my Ryatsu is completely different from before. Even Vasto Lord felt uncomfortable facing me, and I can easily suppress him. Idiot! Dustless sneered again and again. His tone was full of disdain as he said bluntly, your spiritual pressure is indeed stronger than mine, but spiritual pressure alone cannot determine the outcome of a battle. Although the 10-tailed Dustless chakra had unlimited spiritual pressure, it was indeed limited. You're still far from it. Looking at the imposing and magnificent Endless Night Palace, Dustless felt particularly unhappy, and an indescribable sense of disgust rose in his heart. A mere lackey actually built such a majestic palace. It was really unforgivable. Chakra erupted, and Dustless's body flashed with a dazzling light. The two-faced, four-armed monster covered Dustless's body, and made the same hand seals as Dustless. Tenebrous Tremor Star. Regardless of whether he was jealous or envious, Dustless felt uncomfortable in his heart. It was just a lackey, and the dog shed should be his final destination. At the same time, the outside of Endless Night Palace suddenly became pitch black, and the wandering great voids all looked at the depths of the sky. The perception of voids was different from ordinary people, and the falling supermeteorite made all the creatures tremble in fear. Who is it that has done such a heinous thing? They have provoked the wrath of the gods. Why are you still talking? Hurry up and run. That kind of thing. Only a great void like Vastolord can get rid of it. Countless panic screams could be heard coming from the usually strictly disciplined virtual night palace. Soon after, countless great void beings fled in all directions. Their fearful appearance made the East Deity very angry. Useless trash, you're actually scared away by this kind of thing. Be careful of your lives. Dong Xianyao shouted loudly, and his voice carried the fluctuation of spiritual pressure, and it resounded in the sky within a radius of 10 miles, rupturing the eardrums of all the escaping great voids, and their bodies were split into two as if they were hacked to death. Good-for-nothing fence-sitter. Dong Xianyao gritted his teeth and roared. His tone was filled with endless murderous intent and hatred. If you have the time to worry about others, why don't you worry about your own situation? A cold wind swept over with a powerful force, but Dong Xianyao was indifferent. No matter how he was attacked, he could not be killed, and his super regeneration ability could ignore all attacks. Even if it was destroyed, it could be repaired. Light speed kick. The destructive fluctuation came from behind, and Dong Xianyao stood still. There was no need for him to run, as he could withstand this kind of attack with his physical body. Boom boom boom. An ear-piercing roar came from the sky, and the violent vibration made people deaf. Dong Xianyao, who was standing still in the flame, still did not have any reaction. It has completely surpassed the dimension of death and void. Seeing this, Dustless gently nodded, and had a new understanding of the Hogyoku, a heaven-defying material. Dong Xianyao was only borrowing the power of the Hogyoku, and had not completely integrated with it, and could not evolve, but his strength was enough to crush the Captain class and Vasto Lord. And this was still a half-finished Hogyoku. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, a strange fluctuation came from Dustless's body, and a mysterious blue light was emitted, and a mysterious special spiritual pressure overflowed. This is the Hogyoku. Looking at his chest in shock, Dustless's mind came up with an extremely absurd idea. The Hogyoku that he snatched was constantly leaking out mysterious spiritual pressure. Dustless's spiritual pressure, which was originally at the bottom, was suddenly restored. Chapter 1030. The meteorite fell, and the outside of Las Noches Palace was in an uproar. Dustless and Dong Xianyao were in a dead silence. Dong Xianyao, who was confronting Dustless, was even more alert. His clothes were stained with sweat, and he was very nervous. Dustless was the strongest enemy he had ever encountered. Could it be an illusion? That strange fluctuation of Ryatsu just now was unusual. Dong Xianyao thought in his heart. Dustless gave him the feeling of a bottomless reservoir with little Ryatsu left. But who would have thought that in an instant his Ryatsu was filled to the brim? It's really a good thing, TSK. But it's a pity that it's only a half-finished product. If it's complete, once the host feels fear or death, it will evolve to a higher realm. Dustless sighed in his heart. He felt the steady flow of Ryatsu in his body. He moved his muscles and bones comfortably, and there was a crackling sound of bones. His eyes were like torches as he stared at Dong Xianyao, and a thought-provoking smile appeared on his face. It should be two Hogyoku that resonated. TSK. It also means that the other Hogyoku is on him. Dustless thought in his mind. He didn't fuse with the Hogyoku at all, but the Hogyoku unexpectedly leaked Ryatsu. Dustless guessed that the two Hogyoku resonated with each other, and then caused Ryatsu to leak out and fill the bottomless Ryatsu in his body. It seems that the Hogyoku developed by Aizen is around, or it's in Dong Xianyao's hands. Dustless looked at Dong Xianyao with eyes full of desire and desire. At the same time, Dong Xianyao also noticed the change in Dustless's Ryatsu, and his face changed drastically. Hado 88, Flying Dragon Strikes Thief Sky Thunder Cannon. Dong Xianyao, who realized that something was wrong, waved his hand, and a fierce and unparalleled beam of light appeared. The target was Dustless, who was somewhat stunned. Boom, boom, boom. Everything that came in contact with the beam of light, including life force, was evaporated, and blood was easily penetrated. The place where Dustless's combat power was previously was just like a stretch of charred ruins. Let's see what you have to fight me. His spiritual pressure spread out, not letting go of any corner. Sensing that Dustless's spiritual pressure had completely disappeared, East Deity heaved a sigh of relief. The nightmare that had been shrouding her was finally gone with the wind, returning to dust. Her heart was exceptionally relaxed. It's finally over. What a bunch of trash, shouting here and there. Where's your sense of propriety? East Deity let out a sigh of relief. Hearing the noise coming from outside the virtual night palace, he coldly snorted. Just as he was about to turn around, his face instantly froze. A figure had invaded his vision. He didn't die. When did it happen? Pucci. Before he could finish speaking, East Deity Yao's entire body was in incomparable pain. His arm, which was sharper than a blade, forcefully tore open his chest. You bastard, you were aiming for that right from the start? Dong Xianyao clenched his fists tightly and raised his trembling hands, wanting to stop Dustless's actions. The Hogyoku isn't something that someone like you can touch. Using all the strength in his body, East Deity Yao's hands grabbed towards Dustless. The surface of his hands was covered with some materialized spiritual pressure, shining with cold light. Immediately, he slashed towards Dustless. You don't know what's good for you. Seeing this, Dustless's expression turned cold. An array of golden light shot out from his fingertip. Pucci. Blood sprayed onto the ground, and two more severed arms appeared. Both of East Deity Yao's arms were empty, and he was in extreme pain. His expression was distorted as he knelt on the ground, sweating profusely. Found it. After a few breaths of time, Dustless's eyes flashed, and he took out a blue sphere from East Deity Yao's chest. You relied on this thing to give those greater void the power of death, right? Dustless said as he played with the sphere in his hand. Looking at the Hogyoku in his hand, this was only a semi-finished product. However, East Deity Yao had broken it in advance, and there was a huge flaw in it. Humph. Hearing this, East Deity Yao turned his head. Dustless's ugly face made him annoyed. The head captain gave me the order to destroy this thing. Destroy? Haha, stop dreaming. The material used to construct the Hogyoku is special, and no one in this world can destroy the Hogyoku. Not to mention a half-baked like you, even the head captain can't do it. East Deity Yao laughed crazily. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless smiled and looked at the Hogyoku in his hand playfully. Suddenly, a black sphere jumped out from his back. Ka ka ka. A broken sound attracted East Deity Yao's attention. The smile on his face disappeared, and he looked towards the source. The Hogyoku was slowly eroded by the black sphere, and cracks appeared. It's fake, it must be fake. Seeing this, East Deity Yao roared crazily. I tried everything in the past, but I couldn't destroy the Hogyoku. That's why I said you are an ordinary person. Dustless said calmly. The fragments of the Hogyoku were rapidly peeling off, and in just 5 or 6 seconds, it turned into nothing, destroyed by Dustless's ruthless use of the truth-seeking ball. In this way, your dream is over. Looking down at the dazed East Deity Yao, Dustless knocked him out with a karate chop, but he didn't kill him. This kid was finished, the Hogyoku was taken away, and both his arms were crippled. It didn't matter whether he was alive or dead. Capturing you back to Soul Society is another great merit. You can also get rid of my suspicion, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. There was a reason why he didn't kill East Deity Yao. Dustless still needed East Deity Yao's mouth to let the whole Soul Society know that the Hogyoku was destroyed. TSK, in order to get the 2 of you. I have never been so tired in my life. Looking at the 2 Hogyoku in his hand, Dustless was very excited. The scene of the Hogyoku being destroyed was just a self-directed illusion. Chapter 1031. Looking at the 2 bright gems in his hand, Dustless frowned, and his pupils immediately twisted sharply. Kamui. Space twisted, and the 2 Hogyoku in his hand suddenly disappeared. It's time to leave. Wu Chen sighed as he glanced at Dong Xian, who was bleeding profusely. He immediately walked to his side and stopped his bleeding arms. He was still counting on Dong Xian to give false testimony. It was not worth the loss if he died. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, the sky suddenly turned dark green. Dustless was slightly stunned and looked up. A huge void flash came head-on. One after another, it's endless. With his eyes fixed, Dustless pulled out the first-generation ghost blade, covered the tip of the blade with a touch of golden ryatsu, and then threw out the blade. Kacha! The golden slash cut through the thistles and thorns, displaying an overwhelming power. The incoming dark green flash was directly torn into 2 halves, brushing past Dustless's shoulder. Boom boom boom. 2 large holes were blasted in the ravaged Lossy Palace again, and the air blew in. The dull Lossy Palace was much cooler, and it added a little vitality. With the faint light, Dustless saw the newcomer. Oquiora. Ripples appeared in his calm eyes. Dustless still remembered this vasto lord. Among the 10 blades in the future, he was the only one who could perform the second return to blade. Your boss is almost dead. Do you still want to stop me? Pointing to Dong Xianyao, who was unconscious and his heart was about to stop beating, Dustless asked. Although it's said that when the Grim Reaper meets a void, it's usually a fight to the death, but today I'm in a good mood, so if you know what's good for you, get out of my way, and I can pretend that nothing happened. Having just seized the Hogyoku, Dustless smiled, and was indeed in a good mood. Clang clang clang. While speaking, Ulquiora's Zanpakuto was unsheathed, and his face was cold from beginning to end. He said, like you said, 2 hostile races can only fight to the death. You're in a good mood, but unfortunately, I'm in a bad mood. This kid is so loyal, Eisen. Dustless smacked his lips. He couldn't help but admire Eisen. Eisen was able to train his subordinates to the point where they were willing to die together with the enemy. Bang bang bang. The air exploded several times in succession, as if space had been torn apart. Okiura disappeared without a trace, his speed making people blush with shame. Got it. Okiura's emerald eyes bloomed with ominous light, and he immediately displayed the brutality of a great void at the level of Vasto Lord. In an instant, a blue flash condensed in his hand and compressed into a sharp spirit spear. Dustless was completely unaware as he stabbed towards his heart. Poochie. A fatal blow pierced through Dustless's body, leaving behind a ghastly hole the size of a human head. Strange. Seeing this, not only was Ulquiorra not happy, he raised his eyebrows, a puzzled look on his face. Why didn't he bleed when his heart was pierced? His mind was filled with confusion and hesitation. This was the first time he had encountered such an incredible thing. It was completely beyond his imagination. Just as Ulquiorra was thinking, a turbulent repulsive force hit him. Shinra Tensei. Without even the time to react, Ulquiorra was easily sent flying. Ka. Dense cracks appeared on the wall that was far thicker than steel. Ulquiorra was deeply trapped in it, and his dazed eyes seemed to have not realized what had happened. In a flash, he was easily forced back. Dustless flicked away the dust and said, "It's normal to feel confused. I'm fundamentally different from the death god and void you fought in the past." Elemental transformation was enough for him to run rampant. Staring at the fallen Eastern sage, Dustless's eyes began to distort again. Divine might. A vortex appeared in the void, and Eastern sage was immediately swallowed by it. As for Ulquiorra, he was ignored like air. Dustless simply left him with his back view and left. Vasto Lord was actually not as exaggerated as he had imagined. For ordinary captains he was very troublesome, but for some veteran captains, the so-called Vasto Lord was actually just SOSO. It's not good for you to leave just like that. Where are your eyes looking? Your enemy is in front of you. Don't look up at the sky. We were ignored. The great voids that suddenly appeared blocked Dustless's path of retreat. Seeing him looking up at the sky, they roared angrily. He actually shattered the heaven tremor star. The meteorite that fell from the sky turned into countless particles. The initiator should be the army formed by this group of Ajuchas and Vasto Lord. He's very strong. I heard that Baligan was defeated by him. The middle-aged Great Void said with a cautious tone. My mission is completed. Before my mood turns bad, it's best to leave. Dustless had no interest in this group of Great Voids. He already obtained 2 Hogyoku. His next mission was to return to Soul Society and fuse with them secretly. You want to leave? That won't do. If you leave so casually, we will be the unlucky ones in the end, Nabila said with an unfriendly expression. The other Great Voids also nodded with fear. They watched Dustless leave unscathed. How could Aizen Sosuke let them go? Dustless frowned. He did not intend to kill this group of voids. But there were always some arrogant idiots in this world who thought they were strong. For example, this Ajuchas called Nabila in front of him. Since you all like to play the game of ascension so much, I will fulfill your wish. Dustless's expression turned cold. His killing intent exploded. Chapter 1032. Dustless returned to Soul Society with satisfaction. But Shiro and Shisadora Senjumaru had a hard time. Although the two were strong, they weren't like Dustless. They didn't have a series of heaven-defying ninjutsu, nor did they have elemental transformation to be immune to physical attacks. They could only fight head-on with the thousands of Minos from Empty Temple. Shisadora Senjumaru and Shiro were extremely angry. They swore to return to Soul Society and teach Dustless a lesson. This debt must be paid. After returning to Soul Society, Dustless didn't rush to find the head captain. Instead, he returned to the 7th Division first. After East Senju defected and left Soul Society, Dustless was transferred from the 11th Division to the 7th Division. The original captain was Zaraki. After returning to the 7th Division, Dustless took a quick bath and then had a good sleep. The next day, he went to the 1st Division for the captain's meeting. In the large first division, only head captain Yamamoto was sitting. The other captains were standing. Even so, they didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction. Head captain Yamamoto was equivalent to the history of Seoul society. He personally created the Godi 13. No one could compare to him in terms of strength and experience. Captain Dustless, you returned with a smile on your face. The trip to Hueco Mundo must have been a great success. Aizen stood up and asked with a smile. Looking at Dustless, Aizen had a bad premonition. It shouldn't be possible to catch East Senju so quickly. It's only been a few days. No matter how stupid he is, even if those Minos from Empty Temple are a group of pigs, they shouldn't have been defeated in just a few days. Taking a deep look at Dustless, Aizen comforted himself. Captain Aizen, thank you for your kind words. East Senju, I finally caught him. Dustless smiled at Aizen and replied in a clear voice. Is that so? So fast? Then congratulations to Captain Dustless for making a great contribution. Aizen cupped his fists and congratulated on the surface, but his heart was twitching, and his internal organs were bleeding. Even his usually gentle and refined old face had a slight flaw in it. Captain Aizen's face is ugly. Are you feeling unwell? Do you need me to tell you the process of how I defeated the East Deity Palace to cheer you on? Dustless's voice was light and friendly. Aizen's face turned black, but he forced a smile and said, Captain Dustless, you worry too much. I'm in good health. Eastern Deity, what do you want in the end? The head captain waved his hand and asked expectantly. Here. Dustless smiled, and the void twisted. What an amazing ability. The captains were dumbfounded. They were all experienced and knowledgeable people, but this was the first time they had seen Dustless's unheard-of ability. It seems to be a space-type ability. Is it the ability of his Zanpakuto? Yamamoto was surprised. This was the first time he had seen such an ability that was similar to space control, but he quickly understood after thinking about his Zanpakuto. No matter how incredible it is compared to the strongest and oldest Zanpakuto Ryujin Jaka, nothing is worth mentioning. Absolute strength crushes everything. Divine might. Boom. The void twisted, and the dispirited East Deity Palace appeared, but he was mercilessly thrown to the ground by Dustless. At this moment, East Deity Palace was extremely miserable. His hands were broken, his face was as pale as paper, and his body was covered with wounds. It was not difficult to tell what kind of damage he suffered before. East Deity. Witnessing East Senpai's hideous appearance, his good friend Saojin pounded his feet and stomped his chest in grief. His entire body was filled with a vicious aura that could cause people to collapse. His eyes instantly turned crimson like a blood pool. So scary. Wuchen turned his head and glanced at Suojun. Wuchen was calm and didn't put him in his eyes at all. You bastard, how dare you? Sejin's murderous intent was revealed, and he even pulled out his Zanpakuto. Stop it. The head captain, Old Man Yamamoto, scolded before Wuchen could speak. He felt helpless and had a headache. In the Godi 13, Sajin was the only close friend of East Deity Palace. He had been friends with him for many years, but now his hands were broken. Humph. Sajin snorted and stood back in the formation with a pale face. He took back his Zanpakuto. If he had the chance, he would not let Dustless go so easily. What about the orb that can give you the power of a greater void? Yamamoto thought of the most important thing, and he was a bit anxious. Orb. Are you talking about the Hogyoku? It has been destroyed. Dustless looked at Yamamoto's eyes and said naturally. Destroyed? That's impossible. The probability of that thing being destroyed is 0. Mayuri was the first to question. When East Deity Palace wanted to use the Hogyoku, the head captain ordered him to investigate. Although he didn't know what happened, Mayuri found that the Hogyoku was made of extraordinary materials, and the probability of it being destroyed was 0. How could it be destroyed? Aizen's heart was pounding, and he looked at Dustless suspiciously. Hearing this, Dustless already expected this. He glanced at East Deity Palace and said, If you don't believe me, you can ask him. At that time, many greater voids in Hueco Mundo saw me destroy the Hogyoku. All the captains looked at East Deity Palace, and he nodded with an ugly face. East Deity Palace's heart was broken into thousands of pieces. It took a lot of time and effort to make the Hogyoku, and it was destroyed so easily by Dustless. East Deity Palace wanted to skin Dustless alive. It's best to destroy it. That thing shouldn't exist in the world. Yamamoto was relieved, and he was more and more satisfied with Dustless. Although he had only been a Shinigami for less than a year, he was the most satisfied. Hearing the head captain's words and East Deity Palace's confirmation, all the captain's doubts disappeared. That's it. Using Genjutsu to make East Deity Palace witness me destroying the Hogyoku was the right thing to do. Dustless felt relieved, and he began to think about fusing the Hogyoku. Chapter 1033. Mayuri saw this, and although he was still hesitant, he shut his mouth. The head captain just smiled. If he continued to pursue the matter, it would be considered impure. He actually admitted it. Aizen was surprised to see East Sensei in a daze. He stared at East Sensei, his sharp eyes able to see through people's hearts. He tried to destroy the Hogyoku, but it didn't work. Find a chance to ask about the details. Aizen stood up and said, Head Captain, the great sinner East Sensei betrayed Soul Society and joined Hueco Mundo. He should be handed over to Central 46 for sentencing. That's right, that kind of traitor should be executed immediately. The great Shinigami felt to void shameful. East Sensei is the mark of Soul Society's shame. A bunch of idiots execute? What a joke. That kind of perfect test subject should be put on the operating table I built for Captain East Sensei. Jiejie. A strange existence that can control both Void and Shinigami's power. Just thinking about it makes me excited. It's a pity that Hogyoku was destroyed, otherwise hehe. The group of captains discussed how to deal with East Sensei. Only Seizen and Dustless remained silent. Of course, there was also Aizen, who looked like he was about to collapse. I spent 100 years and the Hogyoku was so easily destroyed. Aizen's heart was bleeding. It took a lot of effort to build the Hogyoku, 100 years, and a large number of Shinigami souls. In the end, it was destroyed by Dustless. Aizen couldn't take it lying down. His heart was breaking apart with a ka-ka-ka sound. I can't let this go so easily. I must take revenge, I must. Aizen glared fiercely, far more dangerous than a deadly viper. Sosuke Aizen swore to himself that in the future, he would not let him off so easily. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Yoshimura Zuozhen was also covered in cold sweat. Looking at Mayuri's hysterical look of wanting to dissect East Deity, his nose was so angry that it became crooked. I will definitely remember this. Zuozhen stared at Dustless with a burning look in his eyes. He clenched his fists so tightly that they were bigger than buckets. A destructive aura spread out from his body. Two little insects. You want to fight me? You're courting death. Dustless remained indifferent. Although Aizen and Sasuke's hid their emotions well, Dustless was secretly observing the changes in their expressions. Dustless was able to see even the slightest flaw. Speaking of which, what's wrong with Hueco Mundo's Great Void? While the captains were debating on how to deal with East Deity, the head captain's words shut everyone up. Everyone's gaze once again turned to Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless had a strange look on his face. At that time, he had severely tricked Seo Tongsai and Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru. Although he was sure that the two of them wouldn't die, it must have taken a lot of effort. After all, it was Lost Yi Palace, where several Vasto Lord and Ajuchas gathered. I don't know. At that time, I was surrounded by a group of great voids, and my spiritual pressure was almost exhausted. After I caught East Deity, I used the portal that Mayuri made for me to leave. Dustless said, not mentioning anything about Team Zero. Yamamoto nodded and then said seriously, today's meeting ends here. Tomorrow, the criminal East Deity will be handed over to Central 46. Phew. Wu Chen's hanging heart was finally relieved. After fooling the people of Soul Society, he could create the Hogyoku with peace of mind, without any worries. Looking at the gloomy Aizen, Dustless had some sympathy. Ever since he came to Soul Society, he had deliberately ruined Aizen's plans time and time again. Now he even took away the Hogyoku. If Sosuke Aizen knew the cause and effect, He would probably die from anger. After the meeting, all the division captains left. During this time, Unohana Retsu invited Dustless to the 4th Division for treatment, but Dustless politely declined. His heart was now focused on the Hogyoku. After all, it was an overpowered item that was not inferior to the Jubi. Along the way, Dustless hummed a tune and skipped back to the 7th Division. "Yo, Captain Dustless, you're in a good mood." As soon as he stepped into the 7th Division captain's office, 2 unexpected figures entered Dustless's sight. The smile on Dustless's face froze, and he said bitterly, "How did the 2 of you end up like this? How dare you? My spiritual pressure has just recovered. I will go to Hueco Mundo and find those great voids to avenge you." The 2 women were Shoutoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsen. But at the moment they were in a very bad state. Shoutoro Senjumaru's skeletal arms were all destroyed, and Sayaso Tongsen had turned from a fatty into a sexy beauty. Such a huge change was due to the exhaustion of her majestic spiritual pressure. In short, both of them were wearing ragged clothes and looked tired. "Don't give me that." Sayaso Tongsen did not appreciate it. They looked at each other, and Shoutoro Senjumaru went straight to the point. "I have investigated the Hogyoku. It is impossible to destroy it so easily. Even if East Deity admitted it himself. I find it hard to believe." Chapter 1034. But Sayaso Tongsai and Shidoro Senjumaru didn't appreciate it. They looked at each other, and Shidoro Senjumaru went straight to the point. "I have investigated the Hogyoku before. It is absolutely impossible to destroy it easily. Although East Senju admitted it personally. I find it hard to believe." Sayaso Tongsai also nodded, looking at Dustless suspiciously, and immediately said, "Senjumaru has investigated the origin of the Hogyoku. Although I can't figure out how East Senju made it, according to the various information left by him, there should be no attack in the world that can destroy the Hogyoku." Hearing this, Dustless sat down indifferently, resting his head on his arms and smiled. "To put it bluntly, the 2 of you are suspecting that I stole the Hogyoku. But East Senju admitted it personally, and many great voids saw it in Hueco Mundo. What is the truth? You will know after asking." After saying that, Dustless closed his eyes calmly. Shidoro Senjumaru frowned. She couldn't deny this point. After Dustless left Hueco Mundo, the 2 of them caught a great void and asked about East Senju. The answer was that the great void was captured by Dustless, and the Hogyoku was also destroyed. So what? Maybe you used despicable means to force East Senju and the great voids of Hueco Mundo. In fact, you secretly stole the Hogyoku. That kind of thing, any death god will be tempted. Sayaso Tongsai snorted coldly and grabbed Dustless without letting go. This woman, frowning slightly, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of anger. Sayaso Tongsai was obviously pestering him and deliberately making things difficult for him. I shouldn't have offended her. Dustless's brain cells were working hard. It had only been a year since he came to Soul Society, and Squad Zero only had contact with Shidoro Senjumaru. He didn't know anyone else. Not to mention Sayaso Tongsai. Right. I see. Maybe it is because of the Mask Legion. Sayaso Tongsai and Masako Hirako of the Mask Legion have a good relationship with each other. After pondering for a few seconds, Dustless had an idea. He sneered in his heart. Sayaso Karusei obviously wanted to take revenge for Heiko Masako, Sarutobi Nishikori, and the Masked Legion. If you want to play with me, sure. But I'm afraid you 2 won't be able to afford it. Today I'll play you 2 to death. Dustless's sneer turned into a joke. Since the 2 of them had come looking for trouble without reason, even if it was Squad Zero, Dustless would not be afraid. At most, they would break up. Then may I ask, Captain Yijo, what do you want to do to me? Opening his eyes, Dustless asked jokingly, to catch a thief, you need the stolen goods. If you don't have any evidence, you can accuse me of embezzling the Hogyoku. Even if you are a member of Squad Zero, it will be difficult for you. Hearing this, Sawan Tongsai smirked proudly. Boy, of course I have evidence. Although I can't make something like a Hogyoku in a short time. I forgot to tell you that about 250 years ago, I was the captain of the 12th Division. Saya Satongsai's tone was very proud. As the director of the Technology Development Bureau before Urahara Kasuk, he indeed had the capital to be proud. Dustless raised his eyebrows, lowered his head, and then asked calmly, "You don't want to say that you want to make a Hogyoku and then give it to me to destroy, right? With all due respect, that kind of thing is impossible without decades or even hundreds of years. Sorry, I did make it." Saya Satongsai smiled and took out a blue bead. Of course, this so-called Hogyoku is just a superficial thing. It doesn't have the ability to obtain the Shinigami and the Hollow at the same time. It's just that its hardness is very close to Hogyoku. Now please destroy it for me. Dustless was stunned and looked at Saya Satongsai and Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru in surprise. The blue bead was the same as the Hogyoku that Dustless hid in the Shinto space. How long has it been? Dustless couldn't help but feel speechless. The time gap between when the Eastern Sage incident broke out and when they escaped from Soul Society was at most 1 month. However, the two abnormal members of Squad Zero in front of him created a Hogyoku in just half a month. Although it was not a real Hogyoku, Dustless absolutely believed that as long as they were given enough time, they could definitely create a Hogyoku at an unimaginable speed. The speed of the two of you is embarrassing. Dustless complained with cold sweat. He couldn't help but want to abduct the two of them to his camp. Stop talking nonsense, destroy it for me now. If you can do it, it's okay, but if you can't, there will be big trouble. I'm afraid there will be another captain in the infernal hell, Saya Satongsai said in a cold tone. Hearing this, Wu Qin sneered and said without showing any weakness, "The conditions proposed by the two of you are really ridiculous. No matter what, I'm still a team leader. If you want me to destroy it, I'll destroy it. Where will I put my face if this gets out?" Dustless's face was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water, which made Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru and Saya Satongsai grit their teeth. If you can destroy this imitation, Hueco Mundo will let bygones be bygones. Seeing that Dustless was stubborn, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru could only take a step back helplessly. After all, the two of them were indeed unreasonable in this matter. They accused Dustless without any evidence, which was slander. I'm waiting for you to say that. Dustless laughed in his heart, and the corner of his mouth lifted into a cunning arc. He pretended to have a headache and said, "It's okay if I use that move to destroy the Hogyoku, but you also know that the stronger the move, the more troublesome it is to control. If it goes out of control, you two can't blame me." Saya Satongsai and Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru frowned and said in unison, "No problem." Chapter 1035. Both of them were the backbone members of Team Zero, and it was a 2v1 situation. Naturally, they weren't afraid of Dustless's tricks, and there was no need to be afraid. This was Soul Society, the headquarters of Shinigami. Once Dustless had any malicious action, he could make a move to arrest him and bring him to justice. You two asked for it. If I don't teach you a lesson that you will never forget, you will really think that I am made of mud and can slap me whenever you want. Staring at the plump figures of the two women, Seo Toshio and Shudora Senjumaru, Wuchen secretly laughed with bad intentions. At the same time, a dark sphere flashed. Is this the thing that destroyed the Hogyoku? The moment the truth-seeking ball appeared, it attracted the two women's attention like honey. They looked at the truth-seeking ball in surprise, like curious babies who hadn't grown up yet, unable to take their eyes off it. Yes. Dustless smiled and nodded. The nature of the energy seems to be similar to the Hogyoku. Staring carefully at the black sphere for a moment, Shidoro Thousand Maru's eyes lit up. So smart. Hearing this, Dustless gave Shidoro Thousand Maru an appreciative look. The foundation of the truth-seeking ball was actually the yin-yang release, which was the combination of yin release and yang release. And the foundation of the Hogyoku was the power of Shinigami and the power of the void. Although there was a world of difference, the theory of creation was the same. But such a small ball can destroy the Hogyoku? Do you think I am a 3-year-old child? Shidoro Thousand Maru shouted, her face full of doubt. Such a small ball was not even as big as the Hogyoku, and there was nothing special about it. Although Shidoro Thousand Maru didn't say anything, he secretly exerted Ryatsu. The meaning was self-evident. As long as Dustless dared to evade, he would be arrested. Don't be impatient. You will know when you try it later. Dustless chuckled. His tone seemed to be filled with magic, and the spiritual pressure secretly condensed by the Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru also slightly stagnated. I've told the two of you before that I'm still not familiar with this move. If something unexpected happens, or if I hurt the two of you, please don't blame me. Dustless confirmed again. Since I've promised you, I won't go back on my words. The members of Squad Zero aren't so despicable as to go back on their words. Then she spread out her jade hand, and Sayaso Tongsai put the Hogyoku that was copied together with Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru in the palm of her hand. She looked at Dustless with provocative eyes, indicating him to come at her. Dustless pretended to be embarrassed and said with some hesitation, "That's not very good. If an accident happens and you get hurt, then I can't absolve myself from the blame even if I die 10,000 times. Just do it, and I won't blame you if an accident happens." Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru indicated that Dustless didn't need to worry. Hearing this, Dustless sighed and said, "If that's the case, then I'll go all out." Both of them were Tigress type, so he had to make an agreement in advance. Otherwise, they would tear up the agreement later, and he would cry but have no tears. Staring at the Hogyoku in Sayaso Tongsai's hand, Dustless waved his hand, and the truth-seeking ball immediately flew out. At the same time, Dustless pretended to be surprised and shouted, Oh no, it seems that I didn't control my strength well. The two of you should quickly dodge. If something unimaginable happens, it will be very bad." "Dodge. You're dreaming." Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru and Sayaso Tongsai looked at each other, and chose to stand still, letting the black sphere attack them. Ka. The moment the truth-seeking ball touched the imitation Hogyoku, a crisp sound was heard. Then countless cracks flashed on the smooth sphere of the Hogyoku, and it began to fall apart layer by layer. "Are you kidding me? The Hogyoku can't be broken." After a while, the heavy breathing turned into exclamation, and Sayaso Tongsai shouted in disbelief, "I'm not dreaming, right?" "Haha. You can try slapping yourself." Dustless teased in his heart. Looking at Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru and Sayaso Tongsai, who looked a little dazed, a cold light flashed in his eyes, and he ordered in his heart, "Become bigger." Buzz, buzz, buzz. The thumb-sized truth-seeking ball emitted a strange fluctuation, and then it spun violently uncontrollably. Under the horrified gaze of Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru and Sayaso Tongsai, the truth-seeking ball became dozens of times bigger in an instant. Ka. The black sphere expanded rapidly, and everything that came into contact with it was annihilated into ashes, and in the blink of an eye, it swallowed Sayaso Tongsai and Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru. Poochie. In a trance, Dustless vaguely heard the sound of clothes being torn. "Both of you leave quickly, or you will be killed," Wu Chen shouted anxiously. At the same time, he quickly closed his palm. Only then did the expanding truth-seeking jade settle the matter and disappear without a trace from his sight. The entire captain's office was in a mess, and everything was erased. The room was empty, and only Dustless, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru, and Sayaso Tongsai were left. Of course, the current Sayaso Tongsai and Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru were completely different from before. They couldn't even touch each other. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The room was destroyed, and a gust of cold wind hit. The two of them shivered at the same time, and then their eyes were spitting fire. Dustless smiled strangely, and said with a sigh, "I reminded the two of you before that you didn't control your strength well, and asked you to leave, but you insisted. Now you are suffering the consequences of your own actions, sigh." Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru and Sayaso Tongsai both vomited blood, and their lungs were about to explode, and their silver teeth were creaking. Chapter 1036. Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai's faces turned green. Their spiritual pressure pressed on Dustless like Mount Tai. They were like wild beasts that wanted to crush Dustless. Ka. His bones seemed to show signs of damage, and bean-sized cold sweat fell like raindrops. You two. I have already reminded you to leave before, but you were the one who insisted on it. Now that something has happened, you can't blame me indiscriminately, right? Dustless deliberately made a difficult expression and said, but he was secretly happy in his heart. He secretly glanced at Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai's perfect snow-white body. His eyes were rolling, and he was particularly wretched. All of this was hidden very well. Sayaso Tongsai and Shidoro Senjumaru were furious, so they didn't notice Dustless. It wasn't until a few breaths later that Dustless picked up a few pieces of rags with a disgusted face. How dare you be naked in broad daylight? What a disgrace! Both of you are a disgrace to the Grim Reaper. This reprimand was more uncomfortable than killing Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai. At the moment, the two of them stared at Dustless fiercely, and took the rags handed over in a hurry. In the future, I need to store a camera in the Shinwei space. The next time I encounter such a rare scene, I can take it as a souvenir. Seeing that Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai blocked the secret department's position in the blink of an eye, Dustless smacked his lips unhappily and sighed in his heart. You are doing it on purpose, right? Sayaso Tongsai stared at Dustless ferociously, gritted his teeth and said word by word. Shidoro Senjumaru's face was also flushed. If it weren't for the fact that she was only using rags to cover her body, it was inevitable that her body would be exposed during the fight. She definitely didn't mind using what she had learned in her life to fight to the death. The two of you. I've already said it before. I haven't mastered that move yet, and it might go berserk. You're the ones who have to depend on it. You're also the ones who promised not to pursue the matter even if an accident happens. Why? Are you going back on your words now? Dustless said without any ripples. Two vast spiritual pressures locked onto him, but he was completely indifferent. This guy is so strong. He's definitely not an ordinary captain. Sayaso Tongsai and Shidoro Senjumaru looked at each other, and their eyes flickered for a moment. The high-density suffocating Ryatsu was removed. If you dare to go out and gossip, I will tear you into pieces. Wu Chen waved his hand to indicate that Shidoro Senjumaru didn't need to worry. He said, although this time's careless mistake caused a big accident, everyone is safe and sound. This is the best. How can I go out and say more? At least you know what's good for you. The hostility in Sayaso Tongsai's eyes flashed away. Even so, she was still gasping for breath. The two majestic peaks in front of her were still trembling. She was hit hard today. Originally, Sayaso Tongsai deliberately looked for trouble with Dustless today to take revenge for what happened in Hueco Mundo. Who would have thought that she would be checkmated by Dustless? Not only did she suffer a double loss, she even had her naked body seen. Just thinking about it made her blush and her body heat up. A strange feeling spread through her body. He can really destroy Hogyoku. Compared with Sayaso Tongsai, who blushed and found it hard to accept, Shidoro Senjumaru saw through it. After a little embarrassment, she returned to her usual calmness and wisdom. In this regard, Dustless was slightly surprised, but he was relieved. Four death gods like Shidoro Senjumaru and Unohana Retsu, who had lived for thousands of years, the moral and theoretical concepts that couldn't be violated in the eyes of the secular people were worthless in their eyes. The so-called body may be just a simple skin for these death gods who were thousands of years old. After living for thousands of years, the desire to have a naked body had long disappeared. No desire and no desire. Dustless saw more depression and unhappiness in Shidoro Senjumaru's eyes. According to Dustless's guess, the reason why Shidoro Senjumaru felt helpless and tangled was that she was disgusted by a kid who was dozens of times smaller than her. In other words, at this moment, Shidoro Senjumaru was full of anger, but there was no place to vent it. Why don't the two of you go back and tidy up your clothes first? We can talk later. Seeing the naked body, Dustless was extremely uncomfortable for a while. Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai might be able to see the most primitive ambition of human nature, but he who was young and vigorous couldn't do it. His eyes were full of burning flames. Dustless took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. At the same time, he impatiently asked them to leave. A man and a woman alone in a room, And the two of you are still dressed like this. It is inevitable that there will be misunderstandings if you are seen. Shidoro Senjumaru and Sayaso Tongsai looked at each other. Instead of showing signs of retreating, they took the initiative to draw closer to Dustless. They looked at him with bright eyes, and there was a touch of passion in their eyes. Is it possible that the two of them like me? I am so handsome and strong. It is right that they like me. This is not a coincidence, but inevitable. With a narcissistic smile on his face, Dustless thought about it. He didn't know where he got a bowl of hot tea from, and he poured it into his mouth in high spirits. Getting close to Dustless's face, Shidoro Senjumaru asked hopefully, "What is the principle of the technique that destroyed the fake Hogyoku just now?" Dustless's old face suddenly darkened when he heard that. He couldn't help but complain. "You looked at me with shining eyes just to ask this question, right?" After that, Dustless looked at Shidoro Senjumaru nervously. "Nonsense, of course it is," Shidoro Senjumaru said naturally. Seeing Dustless's darkened face, he rolled his eyes. "Do you think I like you? How is that possible? You have thin arms and legs. Who would like you as blind? Don't say this kind of joke in the future. It is not funny at all." Puff. All the hot tea in his lungs was sprayed out. Dustless's good mood also turned cloudy. He cursed in his heart and swore that he would not easily forgive Shidoro Senjumaru in the future. Chapter 1037. Hearing this, Dustless resisted the desire to beat up Shidoro Senjumaru, blushed and quibbled. "Thin arms and legs? Sure enough, I'm thin. You guys are envious of my figure." Because of the Jubi's body, Dustless's skin was exceptionally good, exquisite, and far whiter than a girl's skin. So that's how it is. These two tigers want to learn the truth-seeking ball. Dream on. The confusion in his eyes disappeared, and a flash of understanding flashed. Dustless directly refused indifferently. "Sorry, that kind of thing. You will never learn it. Just like Shinigami will never learn the Void Flash. You can think of it as the racial gap." Dustless enjoyed the truth-seeking ball alone in this world. The two looked at each other and didn't say much, or they didn't have much hope, and just asked casually, just like some Zanpakuto's ability. It was impossible to learn it. These two little girls must want to use my truth-seeking ball to deal with others. Is it you, Habak? Although the strange look in their eyes disappeared in a flash, Dustless still caught it. To some extent, the truth-seeking ball was the natural enemy of all things in the world, and anything it touched would collapse. There are many benefits to joining Team Zero. After a while, Sayaso Tongsai also temporarily put aside his personal grudges with Dustless, and decisively threw out an olive branch to tempt him. "Team Zero is unique. Sorry, I appreciate your kindness, but I have no interest in Team Zero. Don't force me." Dustless shook his head and refused. At the moment, he had to focus on fusing with the Hogyoku. He didn't have time to join Team Zero. The so-called Team Zero was just SOSO, except for Sayaso Tongsai, who was barely younger. The others were monsters who had lived for thousands of years, but the strength they showed was not flattering. The hope in the eyes of Sayaso Tongsai and Shidoro Senjumaru were also restrained. Although they were disappointed, they no longer forced Dustless. After all, he was still loyal to Soul Society. Excessive oppression would be counterproductive. Time flew, and a few hours passed in the blink of an eye. The two members of Team Zero left one after another, and Higashi was temporarily detained in the prison. On the surface, it seemed that everything was over, but in fact the undercurrent was turbulent. The Hogyoku that he painstakingly developed was destroyed by Dustless. How could Aizen Sosuke be reconciled? There was no other way than to create another one. It seems that it will take a while. In the empty captain's office, Dustless muttered to himself, holding a blue gem in his hand. Just a moment, the Hogyoku, the Hogyoku, the Hogyoku. For someone who had countless unique skills, it was a piece of a piece, a simple matter. For Dustless has to know. However, what made him confused was that after the two Hogyoku perfectly merged, there was no reaction at all. It was as if they had fallen asleep, and the light that flickered from time to time also stopped. It's just an incubation period. It will take a while before it wakes up. Dustless was no longer worried after sensing the changes in the Hogyoku. The Hogyoku had just fused, and it would take a while for it to work. When it wakes up, the Hogyoku will work, and it will give birth to an independent consciousness. In the dark laboratory, Aizen Sosuke and Ikamaru Jin came here more often after they learned that the Hogyoku was destroyed. Except for the necessary occasions, they stayed here almost every day. Captain Aizen, are you sure you want to create a new Hogyoku? Jin's voice sounded in the silent room. Yes. Aizen Sosuke answered frankly. Although it's a pity that the Hogyoku was destroyed, it shows that we were on the right track. Although Higashi's fusion with the Hogyoku was different from what I expected, the power he showed at that time was indeed beyond the Shinigami and Hollow's dimension. Aizen's voice was firm and unquestionable. His eyes were empty, and he looked like he was in a daze. But in fact, it wasn't the case. A careful person could see that Aizen's eyes were burning with a raging fire. Glaring at Aizen, Ikamaru Jin guessed that Aizen saw his future as the ruler of the world, overlooking all living things. Right. Jin seemed to remember something and said, Captain Aizen, you seem to have made a mistake. Captain Dustless only destroyed the Hogyoku you created. Urahara's Hogyoku is still in his hands. Jin's words pulled Aizen back to reality and he said calmly, that's normal. The Hogyoku is used to break the boundary between Shinigami and Hollow. Destroying my Hogyoku was just a cover-up. As for the remaining one, he is probably studying it slowly by himself. Surpassing the limits of the Shinigami and the Hollow, such an unprecedented dream was something everyone yearned for. Sosuke Aizen had already expected that Spotless would fill his own pockets. But that's good. I'll leave the Hogyoku to him for safekeeping. Once I'm done with the Hogyoku, I'll use Kyoka Suigetsu to tear apart that man's disguise and use the power of Soul Society to deal with him. Speaking of which, a group of people with enough power to destroy the world obeys Central 40 SIXS orders. Soul Society is rotten to the core. Chapter 1038. Time flew by, and 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. A Shinigami's lifespan was extremely long, and 1 or 2 years was nothing to them. At this moment, Dustless was at the Shin Spiritual Arts Academy. East Sunmei was indeed a ruthless person. When he defected, he killed his vice-captain, as well as many Shinigami in their seats, and even the Shinigami in the 7th Division with good potential. Although Dustless was now a captain, he was no different from a general without an army. Thus, under the authority of the head captain, he came to the Shin Spiritual Arts Academy to pick the Shinigami that he liked. This treatment was not bad. It could be said that the head captain thought highly of Dustless. The Shin Spiritual Arts Academy was a gathering place for geniuses, and it was also a thorn in the head captain's heart. How boring. Why do I need a member? I alone am enough. Wu Chen let out a long sigh and walked into the sloppy academy by himself. His frivolous expression was filled with laziness. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Looking closely, it was Sosuke Aizen. Of course, there was also a captain beside him, Jin Ikamaru. What are these two bastards doing here? Looking at the two in confusion, Dustless was driven by curiosity as he walked over. Ishin-kun, long time no see. A gentle voice came from behind, and Dustless's footsteps suddenly stopped. Turning around, he saw Unohana Retsu and Yuko Toru with a gentle smile on their faces. Yeah, long time no see, Retsu. Dustless scratched his head and smiled. His gaze was somewhat evasive. These days, most of his time was focused on Hogyoku. Unohana Retsu had invited Dustless to a couple of gatherings, but he had rejected her with various excuses. Dustless had even rejected the head captain's meetings several times. Captain Unohana, oh no. Retsu, why did you come to the Shin Spiritual Arts Academy? Seeing Unohana Retsu's expression turn dark, Dustless quickly changed the way he addressed her. I'm curious as to why you've come to the Truth Central Spiritual Arts Academy. Unohana looked at Dustless meaningfully, then explained. Today is the graduation day of the True Central Spiritual Art Academy's Death God class. There are a few matches, so I came to prevent the students from getting injured. Those Grim Reapers actually graduated. No wonder the head captain asked me to pick the team members. Dustless's doubts were swept away as two figures appeared in his mind. Why did Captain Aizen and Captain Ikamaru-jin come here? This has nothing to do with them. They can't be here to pick members, right? Chinjun is right. Captain Aizen's purpose is the same as yours. A few days ago, some roaming Great Void Realm experts invaded Drifting Soul Street. Almost all the members of the 5th Division who rushed over to help were killed. Unohualai sighed and said with a worried tone, "You didn't go to the captain meeting these days, so you might not know, but some places in Soul Society have been invaded by Great Voids. Many members of the 5th and 3rd Division have died, and many souls with the potential to become death gods have been devoured." Yuan Luzai scolded Captain Nye many times because of this. There's such a thing? Dustless turned to look at Unohualai and asked in surprise. Most of the members who died were from the 3rd and 5th Divisions, and many powerful souls on Drifting Soul Street disappeared as well. And every time the Great Void appears, it's at the weakest place in Soul Society. Unohualai tilted her head and looked at Dustless in surprise. She smiled and said, "Chinjun's intelligence is indeed extraordinary. You've been cooped up in the 7th Division all day, but you still know these things." I heard it from the students who passed by just now. Dustless's smile froze. He quickly changed the topic and said, "I heard that there are a lot of geniuses who graduated this time. I hope that I, a general without an army, can have a few more outstanding subordinates." Although his mouth was like this, Dustless was exchanging flirtatious glances. Clearly he was thinking about other things in his heart. Aizen Sosuke, that crazy man. Every time I guess wrong, he deliberately lured Daishu to Soul Society, and then led all the members to reinforce him. In fact, he secretly killed all the members. I'm afraid Ikamaru-jin is the same. Dustless's heart was clear. There couldn't be such a coincidence in this world. It's probably to continue making Hogyoku. After all, that thing needs a lot of souls. Dustless's frown relaxed. He sneered. Aizen probably came to pick talented students this time to satisfy the Hogyoku's needs. The stronger the person, the stronger the soul. Matsumoto Runju, Hinamori, Rukia, and many other Shinigami. They're all talented. Some of them didn't even graduate, but their names have already spread throughout Soul Society. Unohualai and Dustless walked side by side. While looking at the beautiful scenery in the distance, she explained to Dustless about Soul Society's current situation. "Damn, Aizen. I wasn't interested in those students, but based on the current situation, it doesn't matter if I snatch a few of them to join the 7th Division." Dustless's lips curled into a wicked smile. The laziness on his face disappeared, and was replaced by a playful and gloating expression. Matsumoto Runju, Rukia, and Hinamori. They all sound good, especially Hinamori and Rukia. I heard they're very capable. The 7th Division just so happened to lack such capable people. After some contemplation, Wuchen also decided to recruit a few. Chapter 1039. Dustless could see many students coming and going in the Shin Shin Spiritual Academy. Today was the graduation day, so there was a lot of people coming and going. The gathering of the heroes. Dustless looked around and took in all the students. He was filled with emotions. In the future, people from all walks of life would be cultivating in this academy. Speaking of which, where is Aizen Narasuk? Dustless looked around for traces of Aizen Narasuk. This kid suddenly disappeared from the world, and his Ryatsu disappeared along with Jin Ikamaru. Wanju, have you thought about which team you want to join? The delicate and soft laughter attracted Wu Chen's attention. He turned his head and looked at the source. There were two young girls wearing Death Overlord costumes. Their facial features were as white as snow. Their appearances were excellent. Their bell-like smiles were intoxicating. Most importantly, Dustless knew both of them. The golden-haired girl had beautiful and long curly hair. Her collar revealed her majestic snowy peaks. Her crystal eyes were bright and full of vigor. She looked like an orchid in a secluded valley. She was very elegant. Matsumoto Renanju? I should be right. Dustless said with certainty as he stared at her body. Because of his abnormal vision, Dustless could even see the pink on her snowy peaks. Of course, normal people wouldn't be able to see it. After all, Dustless's dojutsu and vision were too powerful. The girl next to Matsumoto Renanju. The girl next to Matsumoto Renanju had short black hair and dark purple eyes. She was petite and petite. Without a doubt, this girl was Rukia Kuroki. God is good to me, giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy, Wu Chen said with a smile with bright eyes. He sighed that God gave him face. Then he stepped forward and greeted them with a smile. When he was about to strike up a conversation with them, the two girls unexpectedly spoke first. Please move, Captain Dustless. The one who spoke was the hot Matsumoto Renanju. Her face was stern as if she saw a jinx. Dustless was embarrassed, and her tone was filled with disgust. What's going on? Why do I always get shot when I'm lying down recently? Seeing this, Dustless was directly petrified. A while ago, he had offended Zero Squad because of the Masked Legion, and now, he had inexplicably offended this girl. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he could not help but ask curiously, "This should be the first time we've met, right?" "That's right." Matsumoto Ranjika nodded. Her tone was still cold, which made Dustless speechless. "Oh right, it might be because of that brat Jin Ikumaru. I've been causing him a lot of trouble." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The relationships in Soul Society were so complicated. Sometimes if you offended one person because that person's relationship was too great, you would end up offending a group of people. You must be Rukia the Rotten Wood. Seeing Matsumoto Ranjika's cold face, Dustless also changed the topic. He looked at Rukia with a smile and said very gently, "I have a good relationship with your brother-in-law Byakuya. If you have time, you can come to my 7th squad to play." Dustless forced a smile. When it came to acting, he knew that he was not as good as Aizen Sosuke. "Impossible. You're definitely lying to me. Everyone in the Goding 13 doesn't care about my sworn brother, and he doesn't care about the other captains either. How could he know you?" Rukia blinked her eyes and questioned. Even the Zanpakuto on her waist was unsheathed. She probably thought that Dustless was a liar. What's the matter with these two brats? The corners of Wu Chen's mouth twitched when he heard this, and he was exceptionally depressed. He immediately stared at Matsumoto Ranjiku and Rukia and made up his mind. Although the two of you are very strong, in the Godai 13, you are ordinary. The two's face changed, and they nodded undeniably. They were geniuses in the academy, but in the Godai 13, they were ordinary. Hee. Seeing that the two girls were fooled, Dustless continued to tempt them. The members of the 7th squad all died a few days ago. If you are willing to join the 7th squad, I can teach you. Your strength will increase by leaps and bounds. Matsumoto Ranjiku and Rukia looked at each other, and their eyes were wide open. You still want to fight with me? Dustless was proud. Strength was the weakness of the two girls. Becoming stronger was the biggest wish of every Shinigami, and Rukia and Matsumoto Ranjiku were no exception. Kuchiki Byakuya and Rukia rarely talked to each other, let alone taught her. Ikumaru Jin and Matsumoto Ranjiku rarely talked to each other. In order to avoid arousing Aizen's suspicion, Ikumaru Jin and Matsumoto Ranjiku only met a few times. Therefore, Dustless was 100% sure that he could get the two girls. Are you sure you are not lying to us? That you will teach us personally? Matsumoto Ranjiku's stance began to waver. She pursed her red lips and looked at Dustless with a cute expression. That's for sure. I'm a person who never lies. I have already reached the peak of the Shinigami's cutting fist demon walk. Dustless said cheerfully. His words seemed to be filled with magic. His every move and the slightest choice of words pulled the two girls' nerves. Just as he was about to use the great deceiving finger technique to break through the last line of defense of the two girls, a loud rumble sounded in the sky. Chapter 1040. Boom boom boom. In the cloudless sky, there was an ear-piercing roar, followed by a kacha sound. A long and narrow hole appeared in the void, followed by a heart-wrenching roar. It alarmed the entire Soul Society, and all the Shinigami realized that something was wrong. It's a greater void. After a while, A few black shadows stepped out of the black hole, and the appearance of Jillian made the Shinigami Academy below the Shinigami Academy fearful. Even if it was the lowest level Jillian, it would take a vice-captain level Shinigami to deal with it. For these students, it was a godlike opponent. Roar, roar, roar. Jillian's horrifying roar came out of his mouth, and the crisp sound was like bones being crushed. Many of the weaker students fainted while foaming at the mouth. So far, these students haven't really fought with the greater void. Look at the sky. What is that? It's so scary. It's hard for me to breathe. The teachers of the Shinigami Academy seem to have said that this is a greater void called Jillian. That's Void Flash. Bastard, run. This is not something that rookies like us can handle. The Shinigami Academy, which was full of geniuses, played out an unprecedented funny scene. A group of Shinigami threw away their shallow fighting and ran away. Their running speed was comparable to the Shinigami Shuimpa. This group of useless guys, each one is faster than the other when running for their lives. Matsumoto Ranjika saw this and scolded secretly. Usually they were bragging, but now they were running faster than the other. The Rottenwood Rukia was still standing in the far east, but her hair was wet. She was nervous, and her hands that were holding the Zanpakuto were trembling. The fear in her eyes was hard to hide, and Matsumoto Ranjiku was no exception. Your courage is commendable, but your behavior is too stupid. This level of fighting is not suitable for you two. Run for your lives. Looking up at the greater void in the sky, Dustless was puzzled. It was too strange to invade. We are about to join the Shinigami. How can we run? Matsumoto Ranjika said stubbornly, holding the Zanpakuto tightly, and looked at the Jillians in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Destructive fluctuations covered the sky, and a deep red halo dyed the entire True Central Spiritual Art Academy red. Several Jillian opened their mouths and released Void Flash at the same time. Although I don't know what's going on, this kind of occasion is pretty good. Dustless's lips curled into a smile as he glanced at the surrounding students from the corner of his eyes. This sudden drama, the hero saving the damsel in distress, was not bad at all. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Several world-destroying void flashes rumbled down and locked onto their targets, which were the extremely conspicuous Matsumoto Ranjiku and Rukia. Almost everyone from the surrounding academies had fled. Only Dustless and a few others were left. Just Jillian, trying to strike a stone with an egg. You overestimate yourself. The spiritual pressure in his body surged. Dustless calmly closed his eyes. Suddenly, he was startled to find that the corners of his clothes were grabbed by someone. Looking up, he saw that it was actually Matsumoto Ranju and Shimu Rukia. That doesn't seem right. This seems to have been deliberately arranged. Dustless had a strange expression on his face. He had a feeling that this situation was deliberately arranged by someone. It was obviously a scene of a hero saving a damsel in distress. It was just that the protagonist had somehow been replaced by Dustless. It's coming, Matsumoto Ranjiku said in horror. She looked up and saw that the Void Flash had already landed on her head. Seeing that the Void Flash was about to destroy the three of them, Rukia and Matsumoto Ranjiku closed their eyes in despair and quietly waited for death to come. It was also at this moment that an incomparably ferocious repulsive force erupted. Shinra Tensei. A perfect 360-degree defensive circle was instantly formed, and the Void Flash was easily repelled. Attacking my cute teammates, you bunch of Jillian. You're really not giving me any face. Vigorous spiritual pressure surged all over his body. A bright flash of light converged on Dustless's arm, and continued to expand. It gradually engulfed Dustless's entire palm. Hato's 91st Thousand Hands Bright Sky Cannon. The huge light beam turned into scattered flashes of light. Each side of the light beam was far sharper than a blade, and more blazing than a flame. All of them ruthlessly bombarded the Jillian. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, groups of Jillian were turned into ashes. They were blasted all over the sky. Because too many Jillian were blasted to death, a series of explosions could be heard in the sky. So powerful. The two women choked and looked at the dismembered Jillian in the sky. They didn't even notice that their saliva was overflowing. They looked at Dustless with worship. Hato's 63 Thunder Roar Cannon. A flash of light bloomed, and the Jillian along the way suddenly collapsed. The golden light was unstoppable. It spread for 10 miles and annihilated all the Jillian like skewers. Then Captain Eisen wearing Captain's Haori made a high-profile appearance. Bastard, how can this be? Eisen cursed in his heart. He looked at Matsumoto Ranjiku and Rukia with worship in their eyes. He was the one who wrote the script of a hero saving the damsel in distress. His purpose was to save this group of people at the critical moment. Their souls were good, suitable for Hogyoku material, so he needed to join the 5th Division. But who would have thought that Dustless would play such a trick? Chapter 1041. Sosuke Eisen wanted to cry but had no tears. His painstaking plan had gone down the drain and instead, it had helped Dustless. Seeing Matsumoto Ranjiku and Rukia's admiring eyes, he was furious. If you want to worship someone, you should worship yourself, not Wu-chun. Dustless grinned. He understood Eisen's intentions. Great Void took the opportunity to enter the academy and waited for Matsumoto, Rukia, and the others to despair. Then Eisen and Sosuke Eisen stepped forward. How despicable! Dustless pointed his middle finger at Sosuke Eisen. Then he chuckled. In the end, Eisen was the one who got away with it. Oh, Captain Eisen's face doesn't look so good. Dustless walked up to Sosuke Eisen and teased him. Sosuke Eisen's expression turned gloomy. He suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice. Captain Dustless has been in the 7th Division recently. Why did you suddenly come out? In fact, due to the overly horrifying sound, it gave people the illusion of a poisonous snake hissing and hissing. Wu-chun smiled and took it as a child venting his dissatisfaction. He said calmly, the members of the 7th Division were all killed by the traitor. Now the head captain wants me to choose outstanding students from the True Central Spiritual Arts Academy. These two will be my new members. Pointing at Matsumoto Ranju and Rukia, Wu-chun chuckled and said. Hearing this, Matsumoto Ranjiku and Rukia looked at each other speechlessly. Although they were tempted, they still hadn't agreed to let Wu-chun join the 7th Division. After thinking for a while, Matsumoto Ranjiku was about to reject Dustless, but her mouth was blocked in advance. These two members of my team are talented and hardworking. Anyway, the 7th Division has nothing to do now. If I teach them step by step, they will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Matsumoto stopped. She planned to join the Godai 13 after graduation anyway. She wanted to join Ikamaru Jin's 3rd Division, but he rejected her. Now it seems that joining Dustless's 7th Division is not a bad idea. Haha. Eisen smiled reluctantly, but he still raised his hand and congratulated. Congratulations, Captain Dustless, for finding 2 good teammates. Congratulations. Although he said that, Eisen's heart was filled with resentment. The materials he painstakingly gathered for Hogyoku were taken away by Dustless. Kakaka, right at this time. The sound of ruins collapsing attracted Dustless's attention. Immediately after, a young girl covered in dirt came into view. Isn't this Hinamori? Dustless was surprised and instinctively looked at Sosuke Eisen. Since it's delivered to my doorstep, I'll just accept it. Now the 5th Division was the same as Dustless's 7th Division. They were all killed by Eisen. The stronger the Shinigami, the easier it was for Eisen to trick them into going to the operating table. Hinamori. Her talent isn't bad. She's a good material for Hogyoku. Eisen thought viciously, but he still had a warm smile on his face. He looked like a big brother next door who cared about everything. Thinking about this, Eisen immediately came up with a perfect trap. Just as he was about to capture Hinamori, an accident occurred. So a bright golden light swooped down, and Dustless, who was standing next to Sosuke Eisen, instantly appeared next to Hinamori and said something that made Eisen's heart ache. His cooked duck was swallowed by Dustless again. Young girl, the 7th Division needs an outstanding genius like you. Dustless looked at Hinamori with bright eyes and said, I have heard about your excellent performance in the academy. This time, I came all the way here just for you. Hinamori didn't suspect anything. She just looked at Dustless with a little fear. Being looked at by those eyes that seemed to see through everything, She was afraid. Thousands of miles? Sosuke Aizen, Ranjika Matsumoto, and Rukia were speechless. The academy wasn't far from the Godai 13, but it was within sight. Traveling thousands of miles was definitely nonsense. I will teach you the fighting techniques of the Shinigami. Your strength will increase by leaps and bounds, and in the future, you will be able to become a captain. Dustless's words made Hinamori a little dizzy. In the Godai 13, there had never been a captain who would give up his dignity and take the initiative to teach a member. They didn't have the time nor the leisure to do so. Seeing Hinamori's hesitation, Dustless thought quickly. If he didn't pull her over, she would definitely fall into Sosuke Aizen's hands. Look, you should know the two of them. Pointing at Ranjika Matsumoto and Rukia Matsumoto, Dustless decisively said, "They are now members of the 7th Division, and it won't be long before they are promoted to vice captain." After seeing Ranjika Matsumoto and Rukia Matsumoto, Hinamori nodded timidly. "In this way, your Hogyoku project will be delayed indefinitely." Glancing at Aizen, Dustless thought to himself, creating Hogyoku required a strong soul, and Sosuke Aizen wanted these young students because of their strong souls. Chapter 1042. Aizen looked at Dustless with hatred, hiding it so well that even Dustless didn't see it. They should be here soon. Looking up at the sky, Aizen's lips curled into a sinister smile. After giving Dustless a deep look, Aizen left. In the end, Aizen was just a pawn. He didn't care if he lost him. He gave up so easily. Dustless turned his head to look at Aizen Aok's back and asked in surprise. So simple. Strange. Dustless began to think about Aizen's purpose. It was impossible for him to give up on making the Hogyoku. After all, Aizen was very ambitious and wanted to become a god. While he was thinking, several figures surrounded Dustless. "Captain, where are the other members of the 7th Division?" Rukia and Matsumoto Ranju rushed over and asked in unison. Since it was their first time here, they had to interact with the other members so that they could take care of each other. Other members? Hearing this, Dustless shook his head and said bluntly, "There are no other members in the 7th Division. All of them died, only you and Rukia." "Oh, I almost forgot, she also counts." Dustless pointed at Hinamori and said, "Puff." When the three of them heard this, their bodies almost couldn't support themselves and fell to the ground. They looked at Wu Chun in disbelief. Wu Chun had previously boasted a deluge of heavenly flowers. Who would have thought that there were only a few of them in the 7th Division? Each division of the Godai 13 has at least 100 people. Why do we only have 3? Including the captain, we only have 4 people. Matsumoto Wanju complained. "It's not a big deal, one cooks, one cleans, one handles official business and one sleeps, isn't it suitable?" Dustless asked. The 7th Division's mission was the prison team, but there weren't any prisoners in Soul Society right now. If there were, Dustless would have already killed them. Hinamori, Matsumoto, and Rukia looked at each other. They were stunned by Dustless's words. He wasn't looking for members, he was looking for a babysitter. Kakaka. Suddenly, there was a cracking sound in the sky, and then the void seemed to be torn apart, revealing a long and narrow black hole. Groups of Jillian walked out from within. No wonder Aizen left early. He probably left to hunt other Shinigami. Without a doubt, the more chaotic Soul Society was, the more Aizen could take advantage of the chaos to collect a large number of souls to make the Hogyoku. Even if a daimyo's soul disappeared, they would suspect that they were killed or eaten by Jillian. "Let's go back to the 7th Division. This has nothing to do with us." Both of his hands were inserted into the wide sleeves. Wu Chen's spiritual pressure was completely extinguished. He turned and left. The 3 girls looked at each other, and Matsumoto frowned. "The daimyo is right in front of us. Are we going to be deserters?" Although Rukia and Hinamori didn't say anything, they had already unsheathed their zanpakuto and quietly made their stance clear. "This is not our business. It's the mission of the other divisions. Besides, the 3 of you are just cannon fodder. You won't be able to do anything." Dustless ignored Matsumoto's words and said mercilessly, "With your current strength, You can only face ordinary void fragmentation realm bastards. Jillian isn't something you can touch. Retreat. Boom boom boom. At the same time, the ground shook violently, rolling up a huge cloud of dust. See, the qualified fighters I mentioned are here. Dustless chuckled and looked at the sky in the north. He saw Zaraki Kenpachi carrying his Zanpakuto and leading a large group of Shinigami. The ferocious formation made the sky dim, and the whole world was immersed in the aura of the 11th division. Look at the other divisions and then look at us. Matsumoto rolled her eyes at Dustless and said, "Why are you so anxious? This is not our duty. There's no need for us to interfere." Dustless was indifferent. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he suddenly noticed that the space behind Matsumoto, Rukia, and Hinamori were distorted. Dustless, who realized that something was wrong, scolded coldly, "The three of you, get out of there now." The three girls were stunned. Hearing Dustless's stern tone, they hurriedly dodged. They were considered talented. When they were in the Zhan Central Spiritual Technique Academy, they already knew how to teleport. Immediately, they used all their strength to escape. Crack! The black cavities behind the girls suddenly exploded. A smaller greater void drilled out and pounced towards the girls. Even though they were very fast, this greater void was clearly beyond Jillian's level, and was even faster. It almost caught up to them in an instant. The most unfortunate person was Matsumoto. The mysterious daimyo's bone blade was flickering with cold light. It was about to pierce Matsumoto's abdomen. Its method was extremely ruthless. It seemed like it wanted to kill her in a single strike. 6 staff-light prison. 6 golden rays came from all directions and restrained the daimyo. Matsumoto was finally spared. This daimyo doesn't seem right. What the hell is that? Dustless's expression froze. He noticed that something was wrong. It was completely different from the normal Ajuchas and Vasto Lord. Chapter 1043. The mysterious greater void was covered with strange patterns all over its body. It looked messy, but in fact, it was filled with indescribable mysteries. Strange, it seems a little familiar. Wuchen raised his eyebrows and looked at the mysterious pattern. He muttered in his heart, "Ka ka ka." At this time, an unexpected crisp sound attracted Dustless's attention. Looking at the origin of the sound, there were cracks on the 6 huge lights. Death God, you want to restrain me with trash of this level? You underestimate me too much. The greater void that looked like a mantis turned its head and bared its teeth at Dustless. I'm different from the other Ajuchas. Don't underestimate me. As soon as it finished speaking, it suddenly used force and tore the 6 light prison apart with brute force. It is indeed different. Dustless nodded his head in agreement. This greater void in front of him was indeed not bad. Its strength was higher than Ajucha's, but it was not at the level of Vasto Lord. But, after quietly looking at it for a while, Dustless's expression was cold as the light of destruction flickered on his fingertips. So what if it's different? In the end, it's still Ajucha's. As soon as he finished speaking, the light condensed and Dustless's hand shot out. Dowbreaker 88. Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. An extremely thick beam of light flew out and instantly engulfed the entire world. There was no sense of existence in the sky. The light that could be said to be invincible evaporated everything it touched. Boom boom boom. An ear-piercing explosion rang out, and an earth-shattering shockwave spread out like a wave. What was surprising was that although the mantis-like Ajuchas was injured, it was still alive. It didn't die. A hint of surprise flashed across Dustless's calm face. He curiously looked at the heavily injured Ajuchas and saw the irregular patterns all over its body. It was extremely mysterious. Dustless frowned. He felt that he had seen these patterns before, but he just couldn't remember where. Damned Grim Reaper, I won't let you go, never. Achukas, who was in excruciating pain, roared angrily. The spiritual pressure in his body surged, and a huge sphere condensed in his mouth, erupting with a shockwave that could destroy the true Central Spiritual Art Academy. Captain, if we get hit by that, the true Central Spiritual Art Academy will definitely disappear. Rukia said anxiously. The same was true for Matsumoto and Hinamori. After all, this was their alma mater, and it was hard for them to part with it. You're talking about the situation where I hit him. He didn't even have the chance to retaliate. Dustless smiled as he lazily stuffed his hands into his sleeves. Bastard, you should know when to stop looking down on others. In his mantis form, Ajucha's eyes were spitting fire. This bastard was too infuriating. He actually said that he wouldn't need to use his hands to finish him off. What a shameless boast. He raised Void Flash in anger, but just as he was about to throw it out, something happened. Tensho. On the surface of the Void Flash, a black flame suddenly appeared, and then it exploded violently. Boom boom boom. The monstrous explosion swept across the sky, and the entire True Central Spiritual Art Academy shook. An area of about a few kilometers was turned into a huge sea of fire. It burned for a few minutes before it slowly stopped. It was a spectacular sight. The power of Void Flash is obviously stronger than Achuka's, and even stronger than Void Flash. And this guy obviously isn't an Arcana Breaker. Strange, when did Hueco Mundo have such a void? Dustless muttered in disbelief. He immediately looked at the mantis void in front of him that was affected by his Void Flash explosion, and after thinking for a while he resolutely walked over. Don't come over, maybe he still has some strength left. Dustless turned his head to Matsumoto and the others and said, Bastard, damn it, I won't let this go. Void roared, and his body crazily absorbed the Reiki contained in the atmosphere. This scene shocked Dustless. Impossible. How can a void directly absorb Reiki? He's not a Quincy. Death gods relied on their own training to increase their Reiki, while void evolved by swallowing each other. Only a Quincy could directly absorb Reiki from the atmosphere. Staring at the patterns on the cockroach Ajucha's body, Dustless had a flash of inspiration in his mind. He suddenly came to a realization. This is a blood-calming equipment. Squinting his eyes, Dustless suddenly understood what the strange lines were. After thinking for a while, he realized that the Quincy of the Wandless Empire did indeed have the ability to give Void the unique ability of a Quincy. Squatting in front of Void, Dustless extinguished the Reiki in his body and asked expectantly, Kid, I'm in a good mood today. Tell me the source of the Quincy's power, and I'll spare your life. If possible, Dustless also wanted to obtain the ability of a Quincy. Thinking of Yawacha's omniscient and omnipotent super ability, Dustless felt a burst of fire. Quincy? I don't know about that kind of thing. Achukas turned his head and said coldly, You're just a void, but your mouth is surprisingly stubborn. Dustless smiled carelessly. Soon after, he leaned close to Dustless's ear and quietly asked with a voice as soft as a mosquito, That bastard Ugrin has ward did it right? Who is that? I don't know. Achukas refuted with all his might. Dustless snickered inwardly. He clearly saw the fear that flashed through this guy's eyes. He still remembered that after friend Habak had revived, he had ordered the Knights of the Wandless Empire to capture powerful Great Voids, and he had even given them the ability to annihilate Great Voids to strengthen the Wandless Empire. Swish! Swish! The black shadow was hard to see with the naked eye. It was as fast as light, but in Dustless's eyes, it was extremely slow. Idiot, it's rare for me to be merciful and let bygones be bygones. You're actually courting death. His expression turned cold. Dustless had always hated people like this who did not know what was good for them. Without wasting any time, he lifted his leg and sent out a thick flash of light. Lightspeed kick. A straight ray of light poured out and disappeared in an instant, turning into a golden spear with extremely powerful thrusting force. It pierced straight towards the black shadow. Boom! 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 A huge tremor resounded through the clouds. The cockroach voids was instantly sent flying, spurting out blood. Its entire body was corroded by the high temperature caused by the lightspeed kick, and its entire body was like charcoal. I didn't come knocking on your door, but you came knocking on my door first. Leisurely turning around, Dustless strolled away with a ferocious look on his face. After all, Dustless had killed Busby, and Jugram had an extremely good relationship with the former. They could be considered childhood friends. It was normal for Jugram to seek revenge, or send a great voids to probe Dustless's background. Hold it right there. A shocking roar came from behind. Immediately after, Ajuchas, whose entire body was charred, swept up a sandstorm with great momentum. Turning his head and revealing half of his face, Dustless said with pity, "It doesn't matter if I stand here, but it will take your life, idiot." Dowbreaker 90 Black Coffin. The black light that flashed out from all directions converged. The black light pulsed with an indestructible sharpness, and its target was actually the cockroach Ajuchas. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. After a few crisp sounds, the sharpness of Dowbreaker 90 directly turned into pieces of flesh. One day later, in the 7th Division. The usually empty 7th Division finally had some vitality. Although it was still a little lonely, it was much better than when Dustless was alone. The bright room was filled with the smell of alcohol, and the sound of snoring could be heard. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the drunk Matsumoto Runju. He was counting on the latter to handle official business, and not to find drinking buddies. Now, Matsumoto Runju was drunk on the sofa, and the meatball in front of her chest almost fell out. Forget it, it's time to meet her. After so long, I should have gathered the information I wanted. Dustless sighed softly, and then his eyes lit up. Immediately, he used a shadow clone to temporarily replace him and quietly left the 7th Division. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.